and welcome to the podcast compilation, Volume 2, Mental Health. My name is Brando, and of course, Appetite for Distortion is a Guns N' Roses themed podcast, but kind of a secondary theme that has come up over the course of this show has been mental health, addiction, depression. That goes hand in hand almost with Guns N' Roses. If you look into the stories of Axl, Slash, Steven Adler, Scott Weiland, if you go the Velvet Revolver route, so it comes up. So I feel it's important for me to tell my story for a few reasons, to connect with those who come on the show who are willing to share their stories of addiction, and also for you, the AFD show listener. I wasn't sure how these kinds of conversations would be received at first because, again, it's a Guns N' Roses themed podcast, but I have been pleasantly overwhelmed with the amount of messages that I get thanking me for discussing mental health on this show. So I'm going to keep doing so in the new episodes. But for the compilation today, let's combine 4 big interviews that we've done that are focused on mental health. So you're going to hear from today Sully Erna from Godsmack, Rocco Guarino, who is heavily involved with Velvet Revolver, Alan Niven, the former manager of Guns N' Roses. And right now, let's kick it off with an interview that was taped in studio December of 2018 with Brian Welch from Korn and his daughter, Janaea.
Yeah! Brandon.
Your next one in person.
Nice to meet you.
Live.
Brian.
Oh, Brandon, that's you?
Yeah.
Look at you right here.
Yeah, that's me.
So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Where you coming from right now?
I'm coming from Long Island.
So you just came in here to meet us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Very
to meet
cool.
both of you. I mean, I work here. I wasn't just
Oh, okay.
yeah, but I don't
work here. And
I don't come in until tonight actually, so I have to come back and
Oh, wow.
to show the contrast, I do the Keith Sweat show. Remember Keith Sweat?
Yeah!
80s and 90s.
Hey, this Keith Sweat.
Remember Keith Sweat? That's crazy. What are you going to do? Are you going back home after this then?
I have to go get my oil changed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I want this all to be part of the
Why don't
conversation,
you have
by the
your
way.
assistant
Hello?
do it?
Hello.
I don't have an assistant.
I'm just joking. I don't know.
Oh, because he sees my Guns N' Moses T-shirt, so an old Jew.
And Moses is
Yeah.
Moses, that's
Because
dope.
that's the last name of I guess your manager, right? Or so I got an email from a Moses, not like the Moses. Let me look it up. I want to
What?
get. This
yeah,
was
what company? I know a Moses.
you got it
Kristen.
from Michael
I know Moses.
Michael Moses,
Yeah, I haven't met him yet.
and this is a good segue into what I want to talk about. So he, obviously this is all segued through Sal. He coordinated all this for Premiere and iHeart.
Okay.
And I have an iHeart podcast, and it's about Guns N' Roses in a way.
Oh, so
It's just instead of like another just rock talk podcast,
Yeah.
it's just a hook, kind of like a jumping, like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing.
cool.
Very
So,
cool.
in addition to just growing up on your music, I just wanted to meet you and interview you. And I know you guys, you toured with GNR, and but I don't even care about that. Once I saw the trailer to your movie, I had to come in. That's why, not
thank
just to meet you, but to meet you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And it's
That means a lot, man.
And
Thank
it's
you.
Janaea, right?
Janaea, yeah.
Dude, every person has got it wrong. They're like Janae.
Janaea. I gotta ask. And do you mind if I ask you to talk on the mic? You're a little off. Is that okay?
Oh,
Thank you.
no. I didn't know when we were starting. But
Oh,
yeah.
I'm awkward. I just I get into the conversation awkward instead of like a typical yes,
Wait,
no.
are you recording right now?
Yeah, we can edit anything
This
out.
whole time he's been recording us.
No way.
It's recording in there, but we could always take something out.
But
If
yeah, you're
you
gonna
said
edit it
something
together, right?
anti-Semitic or something.
Yeah.
So we're not just like,
No, this is a natural conversation. This
Yeah.
is what I do. So with the GNR thing, I've often talked about Slash and Duff's sobriety. And their
Who's that? Slash? Who's that?
God.
I did joking.
Wikipedia. I know. That one I got. And actually, a few episodes ago, I interviewed Matthew McKagan, who Duff's older brother.
No way.
And
Is he a musician?
he's a school teacher for middle school out in
Wow.
L.A. And
Wow. My brother was a probation officer and head of all the department. So yin and yang.
yeah, it's funny how things work out.
Yep.
But we were talking about how back in the day, they tried to get Duff to go to, what do you call it? Intervention. Couldn't think of that word, brain fart. And it wasn't his time. So again, we talk about depression and I guess we talk about suicide as well. It's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon off GNR. So when I saw the trailer, and I know we have a short amount of time here, and I don't want to, put so much on you. I don't know if I relate more to you, Brian, or you, Janaea, because I lost my dad to depression about 6 years ago.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But as someone who I see people's parents, or as an older brother now, I can see the effect, not just like it has on me when you're, when you had to leave Korn. It was too much for you, but the effect on the family, and I don't think that's something that's talked about enough. So, and I was also very private. This is just new that I started talking about this on the air. So when did you both decide, I guess, just to make a documentary, and then maybe make a documentary together? Because Brian, you could have just done one by yourself, but to involve your daughter, I don't know if it was your idea to do it. How did the idea to be so revealing and come about?
Honestly, it was like, so there was an idea to do a documentary about when I was leaving Korn. They started filming a lot of footage for MTV and everything, and then that show got canceled, and so I got all the footage, and then we tried to do it again in 2008-ish, and then that fell through, and so I just gave up on it. I'm like, it's not meant to be, and I don't. It's pissing me off, so I don't want to do it anymore. And then we got approached by some people that really do great video and storytelling, and that's IamSecond.com and DeTore Mayo, and I showed him all of the footage I had of like personal footage and with all the archival and they had a vision for it. So we put together a 2 hour and 15-minute documentary. It was about me coming back to Korn. We started that in 2013 when I went back to Korn.
Okay.
And then as the years passed, we couldn't get it finished because documentaries are a labor of love. There's not a whole lot of money, and so people had jobs and careers and family and everything. And so 4 years had passed, and then we looked back at the movie and we're like, we got different opinions, and the story was the father and daughter. That was the real story. And so we went back and started trimming the return to Korn, and just made it a piece in the chronological order of the story instead of the main point. And so the main point turned into, and then they had an awakening. DeTore Mayo, the creative team, had an awakening one day, and they're like, it's her. This story's about her.
That's
and so the light bulb went off. They went back to re-edit, and this is the final version.
Where was your relationship at the time when they said, let's focus on her? And have you done anything, Janaea, have you done anything like this? Been on film? And forgive me for not knowing your background as well as your dad's.
It's totally okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, when he started filming for when he quit Korn, I was a part of that a little bit as a kid. Actually, on the documentary, there's a lot of footage of me and him going to India and LA and stuff, just living our life, I don't know. And then fast forward until they started filming again, and around the time when it was like, oh, Janaea, blah, blah, whatever. I always feel weird being like, it's about her. Like, I think that's so, I don't know.
And the worst timing, too, because we were like, hey, we want to start filming for this again. By the way, she's going through like all this counseling, emotional. Yeah. Hey, Janaea, can we film this? And she's like, but Tiffany from Awakening Youth, where Janaea's been staying at for the last few years.
Okay.
We brought it to her. And we're like, this is the deal. If you want to do it, you can do it. If you do it, you own all the footage. We don't have to use nothing. You prove everything, basically. And so she's so brave. She was like, I feel like it's going to help someone, even though this is a hard time in my life. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and film it just to capture it, And so.
Yeah, I totally admire that, because that's why I started talking about how I go to therapy. And I mean, I used to kind of segue it into, jokes, you in therapy, but it's, I need it. I probably would be dead without it.
Dude, it's honestly so cool that you're talking about that, man.
Yeah, it's so important.
I love it. And you can be yourself and be comical, and still talk about that stuff,
I was worried about losing my sense of humor once I started taking medication, but that's another stigma. And just like,
I'm on medication too. Yeah,
yep, me too.
Cymbalta. Anyone? No.
Alexa.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah.
And just as getting older, and growing up on Korn's lyrics, and Chris Cornell's lyrics and Chester Bennington's lyrics, and losing them basically the same way that I lost my dad. It's like, why is it in rock, and then when I, whether I'm just perusing Facebook or something, and you can see this, the vitriol in the comment section of I mean, not just in rock, but I guess in general, about people struggling with mental health. So that's why I needed to come in today. I like that you said if you can help one person, but have you gone through, has it made it harder for you to kind of get to a happy place? Has it brought you and your dad closer together, or has it made things, or do you feel like maybe now you're too vulnerable that everybody knows your story? See, for me,
that's such a good question.
I didn't have to tell people my story. You know, even some of my close friends don't know, but now everybody knows. Your story.
I get it. Okay, so I wanted to say first that like in the music industry, people forget that these artists are real people that struggle with real things. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a person that's hurting. That's had a rough upbringing and adulthood or whatever, and then they are brought into the spotlight. That's like the industry. It's not a fun life. Like Billie Eilish, I don't know if that is. She just did an interview with I think it was V magazine, I think, but she was just saying how she's 16 and she's changed in just a year time of just like how the industry and touring just beat her up, and she's just struggles depression, anxiety. She struggled with that before, but now it's almost like she hasn't gotten help, and it's almost amped because of the lifestyle she's living.
Man, I want to read that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you for
Mental
sure.
note. Okay.
And so I love her so much. She's so sweet. But so yeah, I just wanted to point out that like people forget that these are real people who struggle, and then throwing this lifestyle on top of it, it's not helpful.
That's what I think about any sort of Chris Cornell story or Chester story. I'm like, their kids are going to read this.
Yep.
You know, so how do you feel, Brian, now? Because you had been back in Korn for a while. You know, they tried to film this documentary. Do you feel that maybe this is, and as anyone who's any sort of addict, you know, every day could be a struggle. It's people, places, and things. Did you think that it was a good idea to put your daughter involved in as well? Or you're like, you know what, everyone needs to see, you know, the effect at all angles, whether it's not just me, it's the family, and especially someone growing up, and how to break the cycle of depression. And that's what I see now with me and my younger brothers, trying to break the cycle. And thankfully, I think we all realize that early age. That's
so important that you did. And, you know, I felt like I've been led in all of this, so I've had peace about it. Yeah. And I live by, like, you know, circumstances too. Like if I feel like if doors are closing, it's not meant to be. If doors are opening, it's meant to be. And if she was good with it, then I was good with it.
Yeah, honestly. Okay. And Tiffany, my mentor, she helped me a ton in, you know, just discerning what's good for me and what's not good for me, and what I'm ready for, what I'm not ready for. So I think with the movie, she knew that I could do it, and that eventually it would be, you know, you know, I could do it. You know what I'm saying? But so yeah, I guess that was kind of it.
So Loud Crazy Love, I can't wait to see it. It premieres December 14th. And like I said, as soon as I saw the trailer, I'm like, I got to come in.
Wow.
I relate to this so much. And I know I'm not the only one. And it's important for, you know, me and my little voice. And I've gotten messages about people saying they appreciate, you know, me talk about mental health. But you and your platform, Brian, and now bringing your family into it and really putting it on display. You know, this is a disease. Hopefully we can stop. And, you know, addiction could be so many different things in this world. Hopefully the rock community in this, you're starting a stepping stone to making the rock community heal.
I do hope so, man, because I love what Talinda Bennington and Linkin Park guys are doing for the mental health too. I mean, everyone is jumping up trying to do something now because of all the tragedies. So we're just doing our small part, you know, and I hope the movie just adds to that wave of healing that's coming to the world and the rock community and everything. And so we're just humbled to be able, because, you know, this is, as you know, documentaries are a labor of love, and so we're doing this for that. That's our motive, is to help people heal and inspire them to fight and everything. And so, yeah, all the information for the movie, though, is loudcrazylove.com, crazy with a K. And we just thank everyone for sharing and reposting and getting the word out there so that, we can make a difference.
Awesome. I love it. And any plans other than just putting out the documentary to the world? Any sort of maybe motivational tour, or is it just
Dude, good question. Yeah, we're talking about putting together some type of tour and going out, me and her for like a month, like a band does.
Yeah,
and showing the
colleges,
movie and talking.
Yeah,
colleges.
I think that would be brilliant.
But we gotta weigh out the demand for it and see like what's going on and the costs and all that.
Sure.
But we have a lot of plans. The movie's going to be available everywhere next to May.
Yep.
And on Showtime, this 12/14 on Showtime, and so the premieres then, and it's going to play for a while on Showtime too. But
well, hopefully, after it comes out, I can talk to you guys more at
That'd
length.
Be awesome.
And I really appreciate it. And say hi to Meltdown for me. He's somebody who's he's been on the podcast before.
I haven't talked to him in a long time. So, dude, I would love to talk to you again. I love what you're doing, and
yep.
Yeah, I gotta check out your show.
Well, I appreciate that. Anytime.
Right on, brother.
Next up on the AFD compilation for mental health, a big friend of the show, Niven. Alan came on to really open up and tell us about the depression that he fell into after being fired from Guns N' Roses. This interview was taped February of 2019.
Yeah! Current awesome dude and current Coyotes fan, Niven, part 3. How's it going, sir?
It's going well. I'm a little warmer than you. I do have to ask, how and when could cocaine actually help? Was it used as an anesthetic?
Yeah, exactly. So the chiropractor went Dr. Steve. They were doing a show in Colombia, and if Alan, you may recall this, right? I know Colombia of all places. They were supposed to do back-to-back nights of 80,000, and then Doug was saying the promoters let's do it in one night, but the capacity couldn't hold 160,000 people. So
this was an event after my time.
Okay.
And I was amused by a comment that somebody made the other day that too many managers, and I had to laugh and agree. I can definitely see that person's point of view. I mean, there were at least 2 or 3 before myself, and there's been quite a cavalcade afterwards of some very substantial people like, Doc McGee and Irving Azoff and Merck from Sanctuary, and my word.
It's like you're in a special club, like the Elk Club, like a Friars Club. I don't know. It's well, we've spoken to a couple, other than yourself and Doug, we spoke to Raz Q, who got Axel in LA Guns, so I don't know if you can count him as the first. But Vicky Hamilton says she's the first. And I mean, everyone who I've spoken to is nice. Of course, Team Brazil is very quiet, but that's just, I guess, how they do things.
Well, they're very busy, aren't they? I mean, as a curly-head friend of mine pointed out recently, it takes 8 of them to keep Axel happy and moving. But I would make the observation that he's just done 2 years of very substantial touring. So you have to tip your hat to Team Brazil for getting that done. Well done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a success. People thought it wouldn't last past the Troubadour show. So whatever is being done worked.
Most of the people on the crew didn't think it would get past Coachella.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I had meant as far as the first show. But to go back to what you said before, we were just talking off the air. You're home in Arizona, and I'm here in the bitter cold New York. Although, I mean, we have listeners everywhere. I mean, the Midwest is in the negatives. My brother who's in Ohio is sending me. That's the cool thing to do. I know, Alan, you're not big on social media, but the cool thing to do is to show the thermostat and how low it is. So, people in the negatives, I feel really bad for. But I mean, right now it's in the 20s, but it's been in the teens and here in New York, and it's just awful. And I just got into natural conversation with you and I about
seasonal depression. It's just awful. And one of the things that keeps me going actually is this podcast. It's helped me get through some dark times in GNR. And I found it interesting. One of our conversations we've had off air as we talk, with Mitch LaFont about hockey. And, it's one of the cool perks that I've had doing this podcast is to kind of get friendly with some of the people that I've looked up to or just had this really cool life and still do. We were, because I was very open and honest about to you about my life, and you had said you got very depressed after Guns N' Roses, and as you alluded to before, they've gone through a cycle of managers. I feel like that now with the Knicks. Maybe the Guns N' Roses is like the Knicks. They have to get the right team and keep firing and hiring people.
It almost sounds like Chelsea Football Club.
Well, here in America, you're not. Well, you've been an American for a while. But here in America, I don't know. I have some friends that like soccer. It's not for me. We can agree on hockey. We can talk hockey. I can't talk. Is Pele still playing? I'm just kidding. That I know.
No, I don't think he's still playing. But there again, I think, when the thing about soccer, and we'll just digress for a moment.
Sure.
Get to the heavy things, but the thing about soccer is that I don't consider it the greatest of spectator sports, but if you've ever played it, it's a game anybody can play, and it can be a lot of fun to play. And if somebody's ever been into the game, if you drop a ball in front of them, they'll immediately revert back to being, 11 or 12 years old and think that they can run all afternoon and chase a ball around. You throw a soccer ball in front of me today, my brain will go, ooh, ball, let's play. And after about 30 seconds, my body goes, what the fuck do you think you're doing?
Like one of your cats.
Just stop. Your chest starts heaving, you can't breathe, and you go, oh, wow, that doesn't work so well anymore.
No, you got to work up the cardio, Alan. You got to, go shark diving. You got to do the old Axel exercises of just running around for 2.5 hours. See where that gets you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing that in a hurry. And when people talk about exercise, I find the notion of exercise for its own sake is very unedifying. But walking is what we're designed to do. So that's one good thing about living in a city. If you can walk places.
Yeah, that's what my girlfriend likes, but I have my car, which is not good in the city, but that ties everything I think together. Why I have the car and soccer, because as I've spoken to you about, I have a neurological disability which affects the muscles, because the message is called a demyelinating peripheral neuropathy. Not in any pain, just weakness in the muscles due to that. So, I think initially when I got attracted to broadcasting as a kid, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Now, my disability started when I was around 9, and it's kind of slowly progressed over time. But just not being able to play sports, it kind of hurt to talk about it emotionally. And I think that's when I started to gravitate towards rock. And specifically, I mean, my first love, and it's funny, I think today, actually, as we're recording this, is the 25th anniversary of Dookie from Green Day.
Right.
Which, by the way, Alan, and I want to know your first album that you ever got of all time, first album ever that you got. It was my first album that I got in a cassette, and I got it in my Hanukkah stocking, my Snoopy Hanukkah stocking.
Well, the first record that I ever got was actually a 45. It was 7-inch vinyl. And it was an instrumental by a band called The Shadows, and the track was called Apache. And the lead guitarist is a guy called Hank Marvin, and I may be wrong on this, but I believe he was playing the very first Stratocaster that was ever brought into the United Kingdom. He used to back an entertainer. I won't call him a rock and roller. He was dressed up as a rock and roller in the beginning of his career to be sort of English Elvis. His name was Cliff Richard, and the story is, I know it was that Cliff was in the US and saw this interesting-looking, different-looking, shiny red guitar, and he bought it, and he brought it back for Hank Marvin, and that was the first Stratocaster to be brought back to London. But that was the first single I got, and of course, the first LP was with the Beatles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That would have been my first album.
Very cool. Yeah, I think my first were Dookie and probably Dangerous from Michael Jackson, both cassettes, of course.
Wow.
My era.
Make me feel old.
Hey, I'm making people feel. I think I showed my youngest brother, who's 22, a cassette player, and he didn't know how to use it. He's like, "What do you do?" Plenty of videos online of, the true youngins trying to work a rotary phone. Hey, at least I remember rotary phones.
Yeah, that's kind of amusing to watch,
isn't it?
with old rotary phones. But I still have my original Sony Walkman.
Okay.
The first one that they brought out that had the little sliding potentiometers for volume control left and right.
Sure.
I've still got that, and it works. And if something works and you look after it, and if it was well built, it'll sustain, it'll work. And every now and then you'll pull out a box of cassettes and go, "Oh my God, look at these! I'd forgotten about these," and play one. But it's interesting that you say that not being able to talk about sport and not being able to participate in sport had that a serious effect on you. I think that's not an uncommon situation when people start to feel a little bit less than in their school, when they don't measure up on the sports field, or don't get picked, or don't have an affinity for and a coordination for being sporting. I went to British boarding school, so sport was a big part of the curriculum, and one was expected to participate, if not excel. And it was interesting because kids in my age group who started to get into music first and soonest were the ones who weren't playing on the rugby team.
You're right, and you identify with what I'm trying to get across, and it's interesting, of course, to segue everything into what this podcast is about, why I started to gravitate towards Guns N' Roses. Green Day was probably, the early on in my disability. I really didn't understand. I thought I had a limp. Then as I got older, and of course, dating girls or wanting to date girls because I was deathly afraid. I was one of those kids of afraid of actually talking to a girl because the worst that can happen, getting rejected, of course. But then just seeing what Axl Rose represented to me at the time, which was this great balance of punk rock, which is what I got from Green Day, but the heaviness of metal and the blues and all of that just kind of spoke to me. And I may have mentioned this on the podcast before. I don't know if I've said this to you before, Alan. I had something, this was before, as we're talking about old versus new, this was before Facebook really became big. I think it was probably around the time of MySpace. I had something called a live journal, and that was where you would write your entries online it was an online diary, essentially. And my icon was the last scene in November Rain where Axl had the raindrops. It was like a GIF before GIFs became really popular nowadays. But the animated raindrops going on his face, the backdrop, my whole background was Axl. Actually, I think I'm wearing a similar flannel right now today that he was wearing along with the kilt. And it was just something that it spoke to me. It was kind of an emotional band with emotional lyrics, but it was hard enough. It was okay enough for me to get. It wasn't wallowing where whether it was like new wave or straight up emo, that kind of music. So there's something about GNR that spoke to me, and helped me, I guess. But then, of course, with my disability, my left hand doesn't grip as well. Thankfully, I use my right for a lot of things. But I can't play guitar. I can't do that. But there was something about radio that I gravitated towards. Playing bands that I loved on the radio. There was just something about it that I felt very inclusive. But as I've gotten to know you, sometimes it's like, does anyone feel like I feel?
You've put your finger dead center on the heart of the matter, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, if with the Beatles as my first album, it's getting harder and harder for me to convince people I'm 27 years old, and obviously getting a little older than that. But with that comes a degree of retrospection within yourself, if not questions from others of why did you give your life to and your life's energy to rock and roll and pursuing that way of living. One of the things that I identified really early on, and when I was a kid, I developed, in my later teens, a pretty strong anti-authoritarian streak. But I identified the fact that we live in a coercive world, that we can be coerced by family, peer pressure, local society pressure. We have laws, state laws, national laws. We have spiritual and religious instruction, and in certain hands that is fire and brimstone. So talk about coercion there. Hold on one second while I take a sip of juice, if I may.
No, all good. Is it gin and juice?
No, just juice, darling.
Okay.
And what I loved about rock and roll and music in an intelligent and spirited form was the fact that it could suspend alienation, and it has the capacity to bring people together by their own consent, and that to me is the critical aspect. So if somebody's to sit on their bed and play me a song, and I recognize the emotion and the spirit and the intelligence within it, and recognize what is being said, out of that recognition comes a willing bridge of humanity between us that is not coerced. And that to me is the beauty of it. This is us saying, yeah, I recognize you, you're cool, you're human, I like you too, and you do it musically, and it is something that is given willingly and not obliged.
Yeah. I feel
and that pardon me, that to me is the greatest significance of music at its best and at its highest. And with GNR, obviously there have been moments when you have to sit and marvel at the response that the band and the album got. And one of the things that I'm absolutely convinced of, having lived through it, was that we got an amazing blue-collar response, which I thought was really, really cool because, again, the best of rock and roll to me has the potential to speak truth to power, and it can be the voice of the disenfranchised. I think we're getting more and more aware that this world we live in is run by very few people with most of the means and the money. And more than once, you will hear me at the kitchen table muttering about the fact that most of us, without realizing it, are tax slaves, And if there's a slight political bent in this, I think one of the biggest cons ever perpetuated on society is that Republicans care about the working man. Good God, they don't. They'll say they do, but my God, when it comes down to it, they're the people behind the savings and loan scam. They're the people behind the derivative scams. They're the people behind the real estate scams. And I just wish mainstream and middle America would wake up to the fact that they're being abused and put a stop to it.
Yeah, it's tough because I also do work on a political show. In addition, just a multitude of things I do at iHeart, and to hear it day in and day out, and this ties into everything with depression because it obviously, here in the United States, but a lot of people have been depressed the last 3 years, but that can be said of everybody across the world. There are far worse regimes and genocides and all the horrible things that happened. And I think that again that ties into why for me it's different for you having worked with Axl Rose, but for me seeing him at the time like a mythical figure, like he was He-Man or Homer Simpson. He was just a character, to me.
Well, and there was a deliberation there. There was a reason why we designed the Celtic cross for the skulls on it.
And why is that?
Well, it was to make it seem just a little more accessible. I love the idea of you being able to identify everybody in a band. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Mm-hmm. It's the same concept, and it draws people closer to a musical entity if you can identify with everybody. So there was that sense of let's make everybody identifiable. No one's more significant than the other. And a major part of the rock and roll mythology is that you can beat the system and you can beat the man, and you can live a life that promises some freedom. And that it's almost a responsibility in my eyes for a band to hold together and stay together to honor and preserve that mythology, because out of that mythology comes hope. And I think that's also a part of the contract with the audience, in that those in the audience who have to suffer the daily grind, who have to work really hard, who are maybe in soul-destroying occupations or a means of life that they don't see much future in, they can come to a show and celebrate that, hey, some of the guys made it out of here, and there they are on stage, and we can celebrate that together in that moment. I think that's an important part of the contract between a legitimate band and its following.
You don't see that often now. I think that's a lot of the problem. Like, you may just identify with the front man and that's it. You don't know everybody else in the band, like you said, with John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and of course with GNR. But where I was going with that, and I think last time we spoke, you may have said you liked the direction that Axl was going with Civil War, and I would look at it
absolutely
like a category of he's got Civil War, he's got Estranged, he's got It's So Easy, he's got One in a Million, and it's not the same lyrics. I love AC/DC, but it's all the same. You go there for one mood. Here, I found a place where I can get all of it, and said in such an intelligent manner that didn't speak to me before. And there was something about that just made me feel cool. Liking Guns N' Roses made me feel cool, and it still, I guess, does. I feel silly saying that, but it wasn't, No,
you shouldn't feel silly saying it, because that wasn't all accidental. I mean, there was a lot of thought that went into what made Guns N' Roses, and I don't think it goes without notice that it was the video for Welcome to the Jungle that started the Blue touch paper to the firework, fizzing really hard. And quite deliberately, that video was a steal of 3 movies. Midnight Cowboy. You know, that's the ingenue coming to the big city, and we were talking about living in, you know, how it can be tough some days to deal with city living. And here's the ingenue with the stem of grass in his mouth to denote, yeah, he's come from rural hick Lafayette or wherever, but he's coming to the city to chase his dreams. Then you have the steal from The Man Who Fell to Earth. And in that particular movie, it's when the alien is so perplexed by human behavior, he isolates himself in a rundown motel with all these stacks of TVs, watching them all simultaneously to figure out what the hell is going on in this place.
Right.
And then you have the steal from Clockwork Orange, where you're forced to watch one screen and it is driving you fucking crazy with what's going on. And we intersperse that with actual news footage that we see on a daily basis. I mean, I got a phone call out of London yesterday from a company called ITN, which is a major TV producer in the United Kingdom, and they want to come over and set up cameras and talk and so on and so forth. And I found myself talking to the producer and saying, you know, it's interesting watching newsfeed from the Sky Channel right now. In some ways, I think I'm watching Welcome to the Jungle perpetually every day. And, you know, I think that video told people, yeah, this is a band with an attitude, but it's also a band with an intelligence, because obviously all this was built on Axl's lyric. And within that lyric was an acerbic, insightful viewpoint. So, you know, that meant that we could make a video that actually had a social commentary that showed intelligence, that we didn't just have big booby girls running around in it to, you know, for eye candy to catch people, you know, males to watch the latest rock and roll song. I think there was a clear indicator from the get-go of, yeah, we might have a fucking attitude, but we've also got a fucking point of view, mate. You know, and I think that came across, and I think that was part of what inspired the most amazing reaction that the band got in 1988.
And that's what I took pride in having them be my favorite band over Metallica, or, you know, if I want to go, like how my dad brought me up on the Doors and Zeppelin. It was just something about that just, I don't know, I felt very inclusive, and not knowing, you know, yourself yet. I mean, who really knows themselves when they're in their early 20s or late teens? That's when you're still kind of, I mean, you could say you spend your entire life finding yourself. That's what my dad said when he was in his late 50s, still trying to figure it out. But there was, again, there was just something different. And when we were talking about, we were talking about this episode, we're going to have this conversation as an episode. You mentioned one specific lyric that I don't know why it never really dawned on me, because that's how I felt a lot while listening to GNR, and that was from Estranged, right? You're talking to yourself.
Talking to myself and nobody's home.
It's, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with. I talk to myself all the time. I still do, all the time, and that and of course many of Axl's lyrics spoke to me, and it's just trying to find out who I am. And it's weird how I just latched onto this man that I never met, didn't really know anything about. But again, another off-air conversation that we have it's again trying to find out who I can bond with over this. It's not just, okay, it's just me and a band. It's like it's getting involved with the fans. It's going on the forums and seeing that other people can feel like that as well.
Well, in some ways, is it that much different from? And I think this might have been the emotional and intellectual portal of the past. It used to be very important to people to know which books you liked, and that people would bond through a certain book, and that would be the indicator of, okay, we've got some things in common. We can see things the same way. Because I think, it's obviously a rite of human passage that when you get into your teens and your late teens, you go through a period of rejection where you're repudiating and rejecting the things that don't make sense to you. And you may not be able to even articulate it to yourself, but instinctively you know it's not right, or something's wrong, or you just feel that, no, this isn't for me. I don't get this. And when I was growing up, that was the middle class, heavy use of alcohol, the viewpoints that came out of that didn't work for me. And I went through that rite of passage that we all go through of pushing that away, and then slowly you start to build on the things that you go, yeah, this does work, and that for me was music.
Here's the interesting thing, though, and to tie it again into my stupid live journal, which was all GNR'd out. I ended up meeting. This was before Tinder and Bumble and all those dating websites. Just people would just find you randomly online through different means back then. Somebody friended me from Canada, from Ottawa, Canada, to that saw that I had a common interest of Axl Rose, and we ended up, I don't know if you air quote dating for like a few years. So, but with that, like that relationship, and referring to what I said before about bonding with other fans over it, there was still something missing. Like for me, it's weird. I don't know how you are, Alan. It's like I need some sort of verification, like where the compliment is coming from. It needs to be more than just a peer for me, because I think so low of myself, I did, or still have issues with that. So finding out about, Axl, that he had issues before growing up, things that I perceived as way worse than anything I had gone through at that time, disability included, and seeing what heights he reached, and also tying that into, when we talked about this last episode with Dr. Steve and Doug, was the lack of drugs that he wasn't as much of an addict as Slash was, as Duff, as Steven. So there was just something there that, like, okay, wow, this guy who to me was He-Man, he was a character that he suffered like me, and I would always defend him. A guy I didn't know. Oh, he's an asshole. Or this was, again, before, when he was like gone for 10 years. No one really knew. But I would defend him. Like, you don't know what he's going through. And I would feel like I was speaking for myself, too. You don't know what I'm going through. Why are you going to judge me? You don't know what Axl's going through.
You put your finger on something really close to the center of the matter. And it made me smile when you referred to Axl as a character, because obviously you can talk about Bill Bailey.
Right.
Or you can talk about W. Axl Rose, because, yes, he did what almost everybody who moves to Los Angeles, I mean, the history of this is long. He reinvented himself in Los Angeles. I mean, John Wayne was marrying somebody. Marilyn Monroe was Norma Jean somebody. Right. And
Brando is Brandon. So I understand that. I do, like, to a degree, I do.
There's a sense of reinvention.
Right.
And like anything else, in excess, it may not have the end results that are desired. But I think we can look at ourselves as in process, that we are, in a way, works of art and development. And I think it's fine to reinvent yourself, because another way of looking at it is just saying, I'm forming my value system. And that goes down to my personal presentation, what I agree with, what I don't agree with, how I treat other people. And you form your own value system and you stick with it. So, yeah, Axel is a character who came out of a chrysalis that was once called Bill Bailey. But again, especially with levels of success, and success is a word I have a little bit of a problem with.
How do you define it? I mean, there are people who are millionaires who are miserable.
Well, I was about to say, more commonly, I've viewed success as a figment of an envious imagination. Mm-hmm. And as with everything, two sides to the story, then there's a balance in there somewhere. Because I'll also look at Axel and go, you know what, dude, you have had the most extraordinarily privileged existence in life. And I hope that you appreciate and honor and respect that to some degree, that you, as you get older, you come to terms with past baggage, present problems, so on and so forth. It's obvious from a lot of the material that was written back in the 80s that one of the things that fired up Axel's muse was conflict. And it's probably a little hard to be, an angst-ridden rock and roller in your 50s and wear that with a genuine face. But he's had an incredibly privileged life, and I hope he knows that, and I hope he appreciates that. Not everybody comes from modest backgrounds in Indiana and ends up owning an extraordinarily large house overlooking the ocean in Malibu. That's a hell of a journey, and it was made with a lot of people. A lot of people put a lot of effort into that. And it was made with 4 other members of a band, too. Chemistry and energy. It's a conversation I've had with other people before, too, is that I sometimes look at bands and see them as an attempt by people who have come from really dysfunctional backgrounds and families to create their perfect family. And when it's one for all and all for one and against the odds, everybody holds together. But inevitably, if the band becomes successful, at some point, all the dysfunctional baggage that has been brought by everybody into the band gets opened up and unpacked, and your band starts to fall apart. There's a kind of sad inevitability to that with a band that does do very, very well, it seems. I mean, I think we can count on one hand the super bands that actually manage to hold together.
Yeah, very few. I mean, I'm just trying to. Who would you say? Rush?
Yes. But if you watch their documentary, they pride themselves in being ordinary.
Yeah.
They pride themselves in not being over the top with drinking, and they pride themselves in the fact that they weren't into drugs and so on and so forth. But, a super successful band also becomes a generator of income. and a generator of salaries, and you start finding that you've got a crew that you've got to look after, and you bond with that crew because you're out there traveling together week after week, month after month, and you're painfully aware that they're dependent for their livelihood on the activity of the band, and you take that responsibly. You have a record company that's making bukus of money off you. They want more product. They want to make more profit. So it becomes a little bit of a pressure cooker too. It's difficult to keep that all in check sometimes.
I think that's what gravitated me a lot towards. I'm not much of a, and I feel stupid saying this, I'm not much of a reader. I know how to read. I've just never been a book person. But there was a period in my life, and it was probably when I first started my radio career, when I actually did take public transportation. I would start reading specifically autobiographies. The one that really drew me in first was The Dirt. It's funny how long ago I read the book, and now the movie is finally going to come out on Netflix. But reading Stevens, reading Slash's, Anthony Kiedis's is one of the best that I've read, and just seeing what everything that you're talking about, gone through, whether it's the family life, whether they started out as the Saul Hudson, as somebody else, a normal person, to grow up to be that character, and the path that they've gone through, that we've all gone through, whether it be actual addiction, whether it be family shit, whether it's problems at work. There was something that really I wanted to read about it because I felt like it was a life that I wasn't living. I felt what they were going through, but I was so much of an introvert that I never got to experience all the heartbreaks and the successes. I just kept to myself. There was something that just really attracted to me to these stories, and I would take solace from knowing that these famous people, as silly it is, because these are just people, whether they're famous or not, shouldn't matter, but this culture makes them matter. That's why, like what you just said before, I hope Axl, and I definitely not speaking on his behalf, I can't, does appreciate what he means to other people, which is why I hope he's writing a book, which is, I think he would do a lot for mental health if he spoke out about it. It's the right. I feel like he might be the right person with the right platform to talk about these things. Slash talks about it. Duff, of course, talks about it. But I feel like Axl would really start a major conversation. Someone like him on his level to talk about mental health, and to see him now, how him smiling on stage to what he was. Like, how did you get there? It doesn't have to be the dirt of all the bullshit, the GNR lies, so to speak. But how did you get from such an angry Axl to where you are now, where you're smiling and waving on stage? I feel like that could help a lot of people if we knew how that happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, the last thing I'd want to do is, woe is me, everything is terrible. But the fact of the matter is that, the rise of a band is a magical thing, and there are many splendid and wonderful moments in that process. But a cliche is a cliche is a cliche because it's got a kernel of truth in it. And when something becomes successful, and when things change around you, and people change around you, and we can talk a little bit later about who's the first to realize the band's getting successful. It's the people around the band, and they start behaving differently. They become more deferential. They want to hang out. And you're kind of looking around and going, what went on? This person isn't the same person he was 6 months ago to me. But getting back to the cliche. It is absolutely true that when you get a big bank account, or when the structure of your life changes, it may cure the problems you had before then, but it will bring its own problems, and they can be just as vexing and taxing and grinding as more commonplace problems. I always used to laugh at David Lee Roth's comment, money can't buy you happiness, but you can buy a yacht and pull up right next to it and drop anchor.
He is a wise man, that Diamond Dave. That's someone I would look. See, that's. I'm glad you brought him up, because one of my good friends, and as I'm sure you know, people grow older, have kids, you don't talk to them as much. But one of my good friends, Chris Bichelle, as my favorite band was Guns N' Roses, his was Van Halen, where I would, be the cliche Jewish guy who's, everything is I'm so neurotic and everything's a problem and I worry. He just was cool as a cucumber. He was Mr. David Lee Roth. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, how do you get to that level? Is it just liking Van Halen? And that's why he would sometimes he would shit on grunge, like how sad it was. He's like, no, I want to party like Poison. I want to be like Van Halen and just have this, this fun attitude. And he even told me once, to give me the advice, like, just look in the mirror and say, you are so fucking good looking, and just say that every day, and one day you'll start to believe it. And I just thought that, and I admit I did that a few times, and it's funny because you make yourself laugh of anything else. But again, the Axl part of it, the GNR part of it, and to see the turmoil the band went through, it was just a wave that I kind of rode. But I'm curious about, because again, we'll talk.
Dysmorphia and acceptance. I mean, we're a couple of guys talking. If you want to talk about those sort of things, it's almost obligatory that we wheel in a couple of females and have them talk about dysmorphia.
Sure.
I live with a stunning-looking woman, and she doesn't see it. All she sees is what is wrong, and I'm looking at her face and going, "You're out of your mind."
Sure.
And watch how people react to you. But to her, she looks in the mirror and goes, "I need this, that needs to fix," and she's realizing that she's not 22 anymore, and it's like, yeah, but you're still utterly stunning,
That relates to, again,
social pressure,
and that relates to, again, how I've looked at Axl over the years. And someone said to me once, because I always feel like I don't wear the same stuff all the time. I kind of change up my look a little bit. I'm going to wait until you're out of the wind tunnel.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. There are people who wear, the same kind of cut shirt all the time, or the same kind of hat all the time, the same. It's like it's their look. Maybe I can compare it to like how Axl is. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it works for some people.
It's really simple for me. I mean, I go into my walk-in closet, and at the bottom left-hand side of my walk-in closet, there are about a dozen black shirts that are all exactly the same. The thing that's amazing about them is they were made for me by Ray Brown in 1987 and 1988, and they are still perfect.
Nice.
I mean, just great craftsmanship that Ray Brown had. He used to make stage clothing for everybody, just everybody, including GNR. But part of that, from my point of view, is convenience, comfort, and getting to a point of going, this works for me. I feel comfortable doing that. So, do I care that I wear a pair of black jeans and a black shirt every day? No, that just works for me. I'm comfortable doing that. So, the flamboyance in clothing is,
I
have a cool jacket or two, but basically, I'm comfortable with my own little uniform.
I got you, and I have plenty of friends. I mean, just like every other rocker, I have a million black T-shirts and a million band T-shirts. But it's just the subtle things that I might do that, because I'll have friends that just wear a shirt with a hoodie every day, and that's just like their look. But to compare to, of course, our 6 degrees of GNR Bacon, to grow up to see Axl always changing his look, and he was
is a good-looking guy. And I'm like, that's so cool how he can always change his look and how he, it highlights this, highlights that. And I would look at him as far as like a fashion, role model, so to speak, to again find myself. I'm trying to find myself through Axl Rose, which sounds like a book.
I was really happy when he got away from the big hair that you can see in the Jungle video.
Sure.
I think he got tired of Duff walking into a room, looking at him and going, "Nice hair, dude," just dripping with cynicism. And I think Duff finally, edged him into something that worked a little better for him. But again, for a performer, there are pressures there. Am I still going to be loved? Am I still going to be relevant? Do I need to reinvent myself? Some people start their careers knowing that they're going to reinvent as often as possible to re-stimulate interest. I mean, Lady Gaga took it from Madonna. Madonna took it from David Bowie. Those are people who tried to keep 2 or 3 steps ahead of being passé or last year, and lived in fear of that.
It's so much worse now because you're right. You can look at David Bowie or Grace Jones, and it was before social media, but now it bothers me. And people going back to David Lee Roth, and of course talking about Axl, they've obviously aged, as we all do. We were talking about your wonderful lady there. We all age. It's just what social media does. And it's just, look where Axl seems to be in such a good place now. And then people just picking on his looks. And it's just, and I'm still obsessed with mine, and just to think that like, wow, I could be an Axl Rose and still get shit. And it boggles my mind because how many people out there go through their family photo album and then turn and go, "Grandma, you look awful. You used to look so much better when you were 20. You're grandma. You should be embarrassed." No one says that. Everyone becomes a grandma. Everyone becomes a grandpa. Even Axl.
I mean, come on. You know that one of the primary rules of the internet is don't scroll down.
Yeah.
Don't, whatever you do, go onto a comment board, because there are a lot of mean spirits being expressed there, and I don't think it's too superficial to say I think a lot of that mean-spiritedness comes from envy and people thinking that being able to post something that lots of people will read equates them to the subject of their venom.
Yep.
And it's rather sad, but on the other hand, take a look at that person who's being venomous and unpleasant, and just stop for a second and go, I wonder what his shoes are like. I wonder if I'd want to walk a mile in them. What kind of life have they got? What have they got to look forward to? What gives them hope? What lifts their spirit? I think we do a terrible job in this society in lifting people's spirits. I think we are far too predatory and focused on making profit for big entities. You can look at television and go, yeah, what's on the menu today? Oh, right, sex and death for a change. Every day we're pumping sex and death through the screen. And you look at the rise of the Marvel films. That's that cartoon thing of I could be a superhero, and sitting in the movie and identifying with my favorite character momentarily. I'm beating life instead of life beating the shit out of me. So I think some of that mean spirit comes from there. And, we agreed to have a conversation today because we were going to touch on depression. And I think the reason that you and I agreed to do it was certainly not to have an oh, woe is me moment.
No, not at all.
But anybody who is in a depressed state of mind, I think it might help just a tiny bit to hear from somebody who has been through it profoundly to the point of being suicidal.
Sure.
To have somebody say, you know what, hang in there, try and do some things that will change your viewpoint, exercise a little bit more, maybe get a pet, do something that makes you feel better, put on your favorite record, because you can get through it. It is possible to get through. Everything isn't always dark. There is always a sunrise at some point. Nothing lasts forever. And if you're suffering from depression, I will tell you, as somebody who had it in spades at one point, you can get through it. And when you do get through it, you find it was worth getting through. You find yourself perhaps in a relationship that you had no expectation of. And you might have been in a state of mind where I was entirely reclusive. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want anybody around, let alone a fucking relationship and deal with that. And then boom, one day it just burst through my front door. And I had to deal with it. And, you know, that was a major aspect of me getting to a better state of mind and a healthier state of mind and you know, a more balanced state of mind where I could look at what's gone on and go, well, that happened. And let's polish the better memories and let's leave the dark memories on the shelf in the cupboard and turn off the light on them.
Can you take us through, because I've, you know, sprinkled in my story throughout, but I think people listening care, and I say this fun, care more about you than me right now. Are you able to take us through what happened specifically, or just maybe, you don't have to go into specifics if you don't want, but just what happened? Like, where were you mentally? You know, were you totally different mentally when you were with Great White, and then when you were with GNR, and then was it triggered at the end of GNR? Because famously, we know about Steven Adler, you know, his book, and I'm glad that he at least has gotten to play with his brothers again, even though it's not what he seemingly wants, but he's survived, which I think is just the number one goal. Are you able to take us through a little bit of your journey? Of course, talking about mental health and, you know, seeing how good you are now and a great place you are now to go from the dark to the light. Are you able to guide us through that a little bit?
Well,
I know it's tough.
Great White was the first band that I ever managed. And there was a lightheartedness about that project. We went through some difficult times. We got a recording contract in 1983 and then got thrown off the label in 1984. And usually when a band is thrown off a label after their debut record, the conventional wisdom in Hollywood is they're done. You know, nobody wants to know. My point of view was a little bit different. My point of view was, if we were worth signing in 1983, we're damn sight worth more now that we've had a year on the road with the likes of Whitesnake and Judas Priest and gone through a major recording process and been on a very, very steep, fast learning curve for a year. And we're all better now than we were in 83. You know, and our relationship with EMI USA may have gone to shit, but it doesn't mean to say we can't have a good relationship with another label. You know, ironically, it took me a year and a half to reinvent the band and to get them re-signed, and we end up on Capitol, which was, you know, the label that owned EMI USA. You know, how ironic is that? But, you know, the point of pointing that out is it wasn't all beer and Skittles all the way. had adversity, and we had to hold together and stay together and apply our intelligence and our skills and our talents to go after what we all wanted to get after. But in general, there was a lightheartedness about it. And, Jack Russell, bless his heart, for all his incredible faults that he will readily admit at this time in his life, he was also a very amusing person to be around. He was a lot of fun at times. And when I took on GNR, it immediately felt like more of a strain and more working. And there was a good amount of stress around that entity from the get-go. I'll never forget Izzy bursting into my hotel room on about the third date of the first national tour that the band did with opening for the Cult. And he bursts into my room, doesn't say hello or anything, he just pushes past me, flops into the sofa, looks at me, and I go, Izzy, what up? And Izzy looks at me and he goes, that fucker makes us miserable every fucking day. And, and I look at him and I go, yeah, well, Axl's got issues. We know this. He's Axl, but we're out on tour. Let's look at what's working and what the bright side is. But the point was there was stress and anxiety around that entity from the very get-go. And it wasn't particularly light-hearted. And it was also interesting to me that, Slash felt it was reasonably carefree until Donington. That had an impact on us all. And I think he said it in his book that was the moment when, for him, GNR no longer felt in any way at any time carefree. So there was always stress there. And the day comes and you're in your office and you get the phone call and somebody says, oh, your band has gone to #1 on Billboard. And you actually find yourself quietly sitting alone in the room and pushing the chair back and going, I thought I'd feel different if something like that ever happened in my life. And I never thought or anticipated that something like that would happen in my life. That always happened for other people who were more intelligent, better looking, more talented, because you second guess yourself.
Right, yeah.
Am I good enough to be here? Am I good enough to be on the same playground as, a Mick Jagger or whomever, You always second guess and doubt yourself. And it's only in hindsight you look back and go, we were pretty damn good at what we did, and we were pretty smart at what we did, and we made some pretty good music. You can see it in hindsight now. But in the moment, you kind of wonder.
You're saying a lot of relatable things. There are people who lose their job and they have to collect themselves, and the family has to work through it. Do you persevere? Do you dig the well deeper? I mean, are there certain family members that may cause more friction, making a situation even worse? So you're saying things that are really, they're on the GNR level, but they're common people problems.
You just used a really significant word. You said job. And when I got the phone call from Axl saying he was going to breach contract and he didn't want to work with me anymore, that had an impact on me that I didn't anticipate, because for me, what I was doing was not a job, it was a way of life. And I felt a much stronger connection to the people I was working with than people in a job situation. I'd worked at Virgin, Green World, it was a different kind of relationship. And whereas when you have a job, you can clock out at 5 or 6. When you're working with a band that you care about, it's a way of life. It's 24/7.
Sure.
It's 365. And there's misguidedly perhaps a temptation to use the word family. So when your family fires you, that hits you a little harder than perhaps you think it's going to. You think, well, that's fucked up, but we'll move on. We'll get by.
But did you have that?
It was not something I was expecting.
Okay.
And I'll put it bluntly. Axl may have been an asshole, but he was my asshole. And I went out there and I fought for him as I fought for the entire band. I signed a contract with 5 individuals collectively known as GNR. I didn't have a working contract with one individual. And we'd been on an extraordinary journey. It's well known that no one wanted to manage the band. Zuthout came and begged me to pretend to manage the band so as he could get them in the studio. And I said, Tom, I'm not going to do that, but I will go and talk to them, and see if anything comes of it. So we went from having an entity that was within weeks of being thrown off Geffen, which is what Eddie Rosenblatt wanted to do. He wanted to dispense with them because he thought they were just unmanageable and a waste of time and money. And we went from that to selling out Wembley Arena. It was an amazing journey. And when that goes away from you, you don't perhaps realize it, or I didn't perhaps realize it at the time, but that affected me more than I thought it would. And then there's the fact that, Doug Goldstein was, in Tom Zuthout's words, he whispered in my ear one day at a dinner, Doug Goldstein is not your friend. He had just come from a meeting with Goldstein and Axl. And that was just a little bit before I got the phone call from Axl. When you feel that you've been betrayed, and then when the band that got you into the process in the first place, I mean, Jack Russell said, we want you to manage us. And I said, you're out of your mind. I don't know anything about management. And Jack looked at me and he said, you'll learn. And that was an extraordinary relationship. So when that one went away too, and from 1995 until just last year, if you'd put me and Jack in the same room, you might just as well bring a pine box as well, because I'd have fucking killed him, But we've actually seen each other, spent a little time together in the last few months, and his physical condition is not good, and Lord knows how many NDEs he's had, near-death experiences he's had. But the person I know today is just as funny, but now he's better connected to his intelligence, and more significantly, he's far more connected to his sense of spirit, and he's really grown, and he's a much better person. But even so, when that band went away, again, after 13 years, that was an impact. And then when you finally get to the point where you find out that when the woman you're married to finally says something of profound honesty to you, and she says, your problem is that you just did not understand that for me, our marriage was a matter of convenient opportunities.
That's one way of putting it.
Oh, well, now you're not just on the slippery slope. Now you're over the cliff edge, emotionally and spiritually. Now you're at a point of going, what the fuck? Everything I valued, everything I put my energy into, everything I put my intelligence into, everything I put my love into, has turned out to be false and not what I thought it was. And that's the moment where the soil under your feet liquefies and you think. In a nutshell, that's what took me over the edge, and I went totally over the edge for quite a while.
A lot of your story Obviously, it's on another level because they're dealing with famous bands, but just the premise, very identifiable to, I'm sure, many of our listeners, but to me, and it ties into this podcast. The last FM station I was on, WBAB on Long Island, I didn't even apply to it because the last station before that, WRCN, I gave blood, sweat, and tears to. I did everything they asked. Everything I worked on was successful, but being let go because they didn't want to pay me more than $20,000 a year. Yes, radio in some places is that bad. That was, I went through, maybe you can identify with anger and then sadness, because that wasn't just a job to me. Like being a manager, it was a way of life. Radio was a way of life to me because people call me Brando, even though I introduced myself as Brandon. So many people knew me from the radio and started just calling me Brando. Even my friends who I grew up with started calling me Brando. I'm like, what am I now? And then when BAB just came out and said, offered me a part-time job, I was there a year. I kind of felt, oh yeah, this station plays so much Guns N' Roses. I love it here. Being praised for a year. And then when they started losing money, they were trying to find any excuse to get rid of me.
Right.
And that was, I got to admit, I cried when that happened because I felt like after my dad had passed, I was on this path. Like, what is my purpose? I enjoyed doing the radio because, I can make money doing more money doing other jobs, but this was my purpose. This was my lifestyle. This is where I felt good about myself, being involved in the radio world. And one of the things that, in addition to therapy and all that, the stuff that you really need going to AA and all these other, the real, the things that are out there, the services that are out there. It's oddly enough, this podcast really carried me through. Talking about this band, talking to different people, such like yourself, Alan, helped me and gave me worth. Hearing from people all over the world, not just, hey, cool Guns N' Roses facts. It's like, I like the way you do your interviews. I like, your personality. I like these things. It's given me purpose. It's helped me still to this day, to this very conversation. It's helping me get through. So I can see what you're talking about because I was really bad too.
I love the fact that you're doing what you're doing. And we all hit road bumps in our lives every now and then, but you've stayed with your passion, and you're also doing it in a way that, when we first talked, my reaction was, what the fuck? Nobody's going to sit and listen to us for 2 hours. Are you out of your mind? People have got lives to live. And then I find out, to my shock and surprise, actually people do, because they... My surprise too. they connect to a conversation, and the interview format, especially on air, is really quick and fast, and it's basically a matter of shilling for the latest piece of product or the gig. Podcasts, I think, are really interesting because of the opportunity to get into a subject in depth and to encourage somebody to be more open. I mean, I do a thing with Mitch Lafon, and he'll chase somebody down, and the PR will say, "Oh, you can get 10 or 15 minutes," and I always smile and say, "Take the 10 or 15 minutes," because I know that once they start talking to Mitch, they'll stay because he listens and he asks pertinent, intelligent questions, and people enjoy being respectfully asked about what they care about deeply, So you'll get a Peter Frampton who might have had a reputation of being not the easiest of interviews, and you have a splendid one with him because you take the time and you ask decent questions. I mean, if you want, I'll take you back to the Bible.
Okay, going way back.
Yeah. It opens up with something like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was good, and the Word was God, and God was the Word, etc., etc. And for much of my life, I looked at that as the way it was taught to me, was that it was a statement of belief. In other words, you must believe everything written in this book from this point on because it is so divinely ordered. And then one day I had an intelligent reaction to it, and I went, fuck off, that's not what it says at all. What it says is, in the beginning is communication, and communication is good, because from communication you get understanding, from understanding you get empathy, and from empathy you get patience. And that's how people should read that. It's not be blindly obedient. What the statement says is communicate, be open, be patient. You know, if we had, an awful lot of our problems in the world dented with greater cooperation, with greater patience, and greater understanding.
That's key. That's why I have patience in Hebrew tattooed on me. It wasn't just for the
No shit.
Yeah, it wasn't just for the GNR reference, but just the patience, being able to just breathe, let things come to you. It's very, it's difficult. Yeah. I would also compare.
Well, you've got to be a little bit zen too.
It's hard for me.
It's something that my partner and I call her my partner because she's more than a wife.
And you guys fight crime together?
We don't fight crime together, but, we work on projects together, and we discuss music together, and we discuss ideas together, and it's really good to have a partner in a relationship. But one of the many things I've learned from her is a little bit of Zen. And she will say, be still in the water. In other words, imagine yourself in a pool with lots of beautiful, fragrant flowers floating on the surface of the pool. If you thrash around, they'll all move away from you. If you stay still, eventually they will all come to you.
It's very true.
And that's a very interesting way to look at moments of stress and anxiety when you think things aren't working or something's not going. And, I think that the most significant thing I took out of my days at Virgin was a first-hand understanding through experience of the power of the word yes. Back in those days, when I started at Virgin driving the van, I think there were probably about 20 of us working in the company. It was very early days. And when something needed to be done, I learned very quickly to say, yes, I'll do that, then walk out of my boss's office and go, fuck, how do I do this? But I learned to say yes first and be positive and step through the door. And again, that is also something that I think is a little bit of a key to unlock depression. It's be prepared to say yes. Be prepared to step through a door that you don't know exactly what's on the other side. Be prepared to say, yes, I'll go out and have a beer with you, or I'll go out and have a burger with you. Say yes, go do something, because that's how doors open, is with the key of yes.
It's very true. That's something, again, that I've learned, is just to go out and to experience, because, in a weird way, I was identifying again with Axl being away, kind of being hidden, being a hermit. Again, what the public perception was. And it was just a little thing of just him going out, and it wasn't like a conscious thing. I was like, oh, Axl's out and about. I'll be out and about. It wasn't like I actively said that. But it's just those certain people in your life, whether it is a rock star you never met, whether it's a family member, a relationship, a job, it's all the variables. It's people, places, and things they teach you in AA that help you.
Yeah, there's a reason why they have Jedis in those Star Wars movies. All of us like to look to somebody as a guide. All of us like to look to somebody as an example. And all of us like to look at somebody as personifying possibility. It's not a crazy thing to be encouraged that somebody you admire is out and about and photographed and seen and go, you know what, I'm going to pull my trousers on and go out too. You know, that's not a crazy thing. That's easily understandable in the human mind.
It's very true. And I'm glad that Axl said yes to getting back with Slash and vice versa. And I'm glad that you, Alan, said yes to doing this podcast, because I think our second conversation on air, you're like, hey, I'm like, hey, whenever you want to come back, you're like, I think that's enough GNR for quite a while. And, you know, I love the fact because, you know, I always thank...
Well, certainly enough of me.
No, people like people like hearing from you. You know, I know sometimes you got to put out statements to get your voice out, but you're always welcome here. I mean, it's on my my press release, or whatever you want to call it. Like what what I put to iHeart to help sell this podcast is your quote that you said to me about, you know, I enjoy those who avoid cliche rockisms and making a worthwhile conversation. I'm paraphrasing your brilliant comment, but that's, you know, that statement helped me, you know, with my depression, because it ebbs and flows, you know, and that's something that
it always does. And you know, it's with that mental condition, it's not like something that one day magically it's completely gone from you. You will always have those dark moments. There will always be a moment when a shadow goes over the sun. But you know, what do the AA people do? They say one day at a time.
Right.
You know, and just deal with that. And for me, I love cats, and if I sit down and have a smoke and spend a little time with my cat, then what was oppressive in my mind, you know, 15, 20 minutes ago has lessened. It's not as bad anymore, and it's taken its proportion, and it's not overwhelming. That's, you know, depression for me is two things. It's being overwhelmed and dispirited, and it's fatigue, you know, and being thoroughly fatigued with oneself as much as anything. But as I said before, if anybody's listening, and if this means anything to you, you can get by it.
That's why I wanted to talk about this today with you, Alan, because, you know, I need to tell myself that. I need to be an example for my younger brothers. And I have gotten listeners when I've talked about, you know, we get into conversations about West Arkeen, or, of course, Axl himself, what Slash has gone through. When I spoke to a couple of the McKagan brothers talking about, you know, Duff's journey. And I feel like I have to, if I want someone else to share their story, I'm going to share my story. And people seem to appreciate that. So, you know, I hope, in addition to, you know, some cool GNR stuff, is people are going to take something from our conversation today, because, you know, it's something that's not going to go away as long as humans exist. It's something that we're going to have to battle, because we've certainly created a society that, I don't know if it helps. Maybe a society that hurts mental health. I think it's good now that we're trying to find outlets and it's being spoken about more, and it's not as taboo anymore. Yep. So that's why, again, what I said before, I think if Axl Rose spoke about this, he doesn't have to talk about, you know, the dirt stuff. He doesn't have to talk about all these things that happened during the Chinese democracy era, his relationship with Slash. How did he get to where he is now? Assuming, because that's what it seems to be, he's in a good place, because I think it would help. And they always say, as long as you help one person, hey, that one person has a family. It affects so many more. So you can literally be saving lives. So, you know, not like it's, you know, I hope it happens.
Not that I would know, but as a mildly curious observer, I'd look at Axl and if I were asked to identify what has helped him most, I would look at it and I'd say, you know, I don't really consider Team Brazil to be brilliant managers. I mean, good God, you know, the mistakes they've made. I mean, the box set, give me a break. But this is what I always think. I think they've been a family for him. And I think that he actually, we were talking earlier about people forming bands to form their perfect family.
Right.
Well, I don't know if he's got a perfect family, and every family has its problems. But I think he's got one. And I think that's what he needed, and that's what he wanted, and he's finally got one.
Yeah, and that's why I've never officially reached out, but if that's what Team Brazil did for him to give him the family, bless them, because it's...
Yeah, it got him through 2 years of touring.
Yeah, and we'll see what the future holds. I mean, we know what Slash is doing. Duff's coming out with a solo record. Gilby Clarke's coming out with another record, first time in a long time. Now the rumors Brian Johnson's back in AC/DC. I would love to have seen. I know you different from opinion. I liked Axl DC, but
I'm not sure that Brian is that his condition is going to let him tour. That's the rumor I've heard.
Okay.
That, they could record together, but he may not tour with them. So Axl DC may well be an entity next year. Who knows?
Oh, well, that would be cool, and I would love, if there would be on the new album, like Axl sings on it with Brian. How badass would that be? And think again, Brian's been through a lot. It's all these guys that we idolize, we look up to as figures, or just people, just flesh and blood. We were all once Bill Bailey, so to speak.
Yeah, and there's no school to go to deal with quote-unquote success. And don't be surprised if you're very successful. At some point, you'll get a little taste of PTSD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know about that as well. Certainly our veterans do, but that can come in many forms and be triggered by a lot of different things. I found that interesting when we spoke to Dr. Steve last episode, when he wishes he still spoke to the band members, but he said he ran into Duff a few years ago and spent like 10 minutes talking. And he's like, Duff was kind of jarred seeing me because that was during the height of some of his addictions. So he just triggered stuff. And we all know how well Duff is now. I mean, the guy could be an action movie star. But just the fact that he, as mentally healthy as he seems to be, he could still be triggered by something. So it's a never-ending road.
You're hitting a thread here. Duff has family that he appears to be very happy with. Slash is now in a really good relationship. Family matters. I
know. And that's something, unfortunately for me, I realized a little too late, but I'm trying to live my life differently now, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, every morning when you get up, you can change anything you want in the coming morning. When you look in the mirror, after you've told yourself that you're stunningly handsome and Hollywood are missing out, also look at yourself and say, I can change anything today. I have the ability if I have the will.
That's what it comes down to. Nothing lasts forever, as someone once said.
No, nothing lasts forever. Well, listen, I've probably taken up far too much of your time. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Brando.
Absolutely, Alan. I'm happy to be able to consider you a friend. I am rooting for...
Even though you support the wrong fucking hockey team.
Islanders are in first place since my mom was pregnant with me. So let me enjoy this, a little bit. I need it.
Oh, I will.
I don't know how long we're going to be there. But it's always wonderful to talk hockey with you and our friend Mitch LaFon, who I will always credit and thank for introducing us. I always give credit where credit is due, because that's where I am now. I want to show appreciation to people, which is something that I didn't do when I was younger, but I'm living my life differently now. But thanks,
showing
Alan.
Appreciation and being kind are two wonderful things to contribute to the world.
I do my best. I have my moments, especially driving here in traffic in New York City. You want to, kill it. You want to kill everybody. But it's, I'm nice when I don't have the road rage. But Alan, obviously, you're always welcome on, and to talk about whatever you want to talk about: hockey, mental health, of course, and if it ties to Guns N' Roses, great. But I know my listeners enjoy hearing from you, and I know I love talking to you.
Well, thank you very much. And hopefully, if there was somebody listening today who's not having a good time, and if anything we've said is in any way helpful, then it's been all worthwhile, hasn't it?
Absolutely. 100%.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Alan.
Our next guest on our mental health compilation is Rocco Guarino. Now, he was kind of a technical liaison. That was coined by Duff McKagan for Velvet Revolver. He directed the Last Fight video. You're going to get his entire story, his personal story, and of course, talking about the late and great Scott Weiland. This interview was recorded August of 2019.
Today, back in 1988, Appetite for Destruction finally went number one after almost a year of being on the charts. Where were you, Rocco? Do you remember where you were in 1988?
In 1988, I was in Florida. I had just gotten out of rehab. I was in a rehab called Straight Incorporated for 9 months. And I was driving my mom's red convertible Mustang GT around. We had like white leather interior, and I hit the brakes, and the cassette tape came sliding from under the passenger seat. And I picked it up. I was like, Guns N' Roses, that sounds cool. So I popped it in. It was my mom's, and that was it. The rest is history. So that's how I discovered Guns N' Roses, from my mom.
That's cool. That was not a planned conversation. That was just kind of my, shoehorning my way into the natural flow of a conversation. And by the way, Rocco, I should have asked you this before, off the air. It's Guarino, by the
yeah.
Okay, cool. You never know. So Rocco Guarino is our guest today. Thank you so much for joining us. And that was not a planned conversation. That's just beautiful. The organicness of how you discovered GNR. I guarantee you nobody else discovered the band leaving rehab in your mom's, finding a cassette in your mom's car. Fascinating. So where you said are you from Florida originally? Is that where you're?
No, I'm from New York.
Oh, I think we discussed this. Aren't you from, you're from kind of like upstate?
Well, yeah, upstate. Yeah, I was born in Poughkeepsie, and I grew up in the Hudson Valley there. It's about an hour and a half north of the city.
Jeez. We had a whole conversation, you and I, what was it, last week or a couple weeks ago, and I'm in the middle of moving. Well, not just yet. I'm moving to Queens. I can say these names because we have a global audience, but moving to Queens in a month, so my brain is hectic. Yeah, we spoke about that, how I used to do radio up in Poughkeepsie for 101.5 WPDH.
101.5 WPDH, man. That was my station growing up.
Awesome.
Crazy.
So when you were growing up in Poughkeepsie, and one of the things that we talked about, there is a great, I don't know how it was for you growing up, but now there's such a great rock scene. There really is. I'm very envious of it. Me being from Long Island and working in the city, there's something about that area that just loves hard rock, maybe like the Midwest does. So what? Because there's so many different names I can attach to you for what you do. I can say you're a composer. I can say you're a songwriter. So when you were a kid, were you always kind of like a Swiss Army knife of music? What did you like as a kid growing up in the Hudson Valley?
More like a guillotine. No, no. I was into. I mean, the first music I ever really connected with was like what my older brother used to listen to, which was like Bob Seger and like Steve Miller and Queen and stuff like that. And then when I started getting into music myself, like heavy, like around 12, 13, something like that, I was into early hip hop. So like Sugar Hill Gang, and I was like a break dancer, basically. I'll just say it.
Okay.
I was in a crew, a breakdance crew, and yeah.
What was your name called? What was the name of the crew?
I'm not going to tell you because
the Rock and Roccos or something.
And we used to go to the Derby in Fishkill, New York, and it was a roller skating rink, and my dad would drive us all there, me and all my friends, like in the back of the pickup truck, which was like super illegal and unsafe, but those were the days. And we would break dance on roller skates. There's actually a YouTube clip of this that I could send you. It's pretty hilarious.
Okay.
like from 1984 on that someone filmed on VHS.
Oh, brilliant. That's classic. And I guess in my brain, and I know your name would not have been this, and you don't have to reveal, don't push it, but it just came to me. You can be Rocco's Modern Dance. No?
Rocco's Modern Dance. Yeah, that would have worked, but I wasn't that clever at 13. So after my hip hop phase, then I got into like, you know, hard rock, heavy metal. I was into like, you know, all the you know, Ronnie James Dio, Quiet Riot, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. And that was a phase that pretty much lasted my whole life. It wasn't really a phase. That was when I, you know, for whatever reason, the people I was hanging out with, you got to remember, this was early 80s. I was born in 71, so it was like mid-80s when I was really just discovering music for the first time, you know. And so there was no internet, so it was just whatever. You usually just heard whatever your friends heard, you know.
Sure.
And so that's why I was, you know, I went from hip-hop to rock, you know, after I discovered it. And then I started playing the keyboards and shit like that.
Okay, because I was going to ask, you know, for me, I was born, not to date anybody, I was born in the early 80s, but I kind of came into my music zone, my music appreciation in the early 90s, and that's when I discovered GNR. I mean, I think my first love was, my first cassette was getting Green Day's Dookie in my Hanukkah stocking, which is such a weird thing to say, but that's my life. But I tried, you know, a guitar class in my middle school. It just, you know, I would borrow my dad's acoustic, but nothing really stuck. I just didn't have it. So that's why I guess I went the writing radio route. But for you,
right.
Did you have like a goal in mind? You mentioned the keyboards. So was that something you wanted to join a band? Did you want to make music? What did you feel like you wanted to be when you grew up, essentially?
I guess it started with the Cars. Like the first album that I ever bought with my own money was, I saved my allowance and I went down to Hopewell Junction, which was a little village.
Yeah.
Near, and I went to the Hopewell Pharmacy and I bought the Cars first album, the one with the woman with the long fingernails with the clear steering wheel. I think it's just a self-titled. Anyway, but yeah. So I was just super into that, and so then I got a keyboard. I got a sampler, an Akai X7000 sampler, and then I got an Akai something synthesizer, and then I got an Akai 4-track. And the 4-track was like what really started me off on my path to production, you know. So I guess pretty early on, I was into both, you know. Like we had like a family organ, you know, like nothing cool like a Hammond or anything, just like a, you know, the cheese ball organ that you have. And then I got a guitar. So I was just playing around, you know, writing songs. Like I never was interested in really honing my craft or mastering one instrument. I didn't have the patience for that. But I did. But for whatever reason, I did have the patience to write songs. So before I even knew how to play an instrument, I was already trying to write songs. You know.
Well, that's cool.
Like piano and guitar. You know.
How were your parents supportive of that? For me, I was very lucky. You know, radio and journalism, they are not easy careers, but they were very supportive of me. But at least there are kind of jobs you can get at a newspaper or a job you can get at a radio station. To make it in music is so difficult. So yeah, I guess how was your environment as far as supporting, you know, what you want to do, your new love, your new hobby?
Yeah, my folks were super supportive. You know, when I was a kid, they would buy me instruments, you know. And but you know, I don't know if I ever really. There was never really a day that came that I said I'm going to do music for a living. It was just more like it just was kind of always there, you know.
Okay.
It was just like from you know, and I was also obsessed with recording studios too. So it was kind of like an all around, you know, obsession with this, like studios and music and production, you know, like the architecture of studios and the construction and the design, you know, the interior design and that kind of thing. Just recording studios always fascinated me. So, yeah.
I'm sure, like I knew, even though growing up on Long Island and especially close to New York City, there are big markets. You know, the Hudson Valley. Yeah, you're maybe like an hour north of the city or 2 hours away, because I used to have to drive from Long Island to Poughkeepsie to that radio station to do my on-air shift for minimum wage. But I knew I had to leave the big market when I first started to go smaller to build my resume. So I moved to Cape Cod, and that's why I Poughkeepsie to build my resume. So now I am here in New York City. So I'm assuming you knew that you couldn't reach your goals in the Hudson Valley. So where did you, I guess, make your move to start making it happen?
Yeah, exactly. So I was always in bands, the first band I was in, I was like 14, I think. And we did like Good Times, Bad Times by Led Zeppelin and, shit like that. I played guitar and sang badly. And then I was in like metal bands, and like in the mid 80s, late 80s, I was in like metal bands. I played keyboards and, and then I ended up playing bass in a punk ska band called Lame. That was really fun because I didn't have to write any songs or anything. I was just a bass player. And then I had a band called Trouble Creek where we made a record up in Illinois. It was all songs that I wrote. Yeah, so basically the way that I left New York was I played keyboards in a band called Unleashed, and we bought a bus, like a school bus, and we painted it white. We pulled out the seats and put carpet down and put like couches in there and shit. And we got some stage curtains, and we ran it the length of the bus all the way down and then like on the inside, and then we cut slits so we could roll up the curtain for individual windows, and the back part was for the gear, and the front part was our bus, like our lounge, and we would go to shows. So we jumped in the bus and we went to Florida because my mom was there and she had a recording studio in Hudson, Florida, which is by like Newport Richey. It's about a half hour north of Tampa.
Okay.
So we went down there to make a record, and then the band broke up before we made the record, but I stayed in Florida for like 10, 12 years.
Okay.
So that's sort of where I really kind of came into my own as a songwriter. I was living in like this little podunk town called Brooksville, and I was living with this guy this was after rehab, right? So I was like 17, and I moved to Brooksville, and I lived with this guy. I think his name was Blaine, and we were both in recovery, we were clean and sober, and he lived in a trailer on a farm, and they had like a barn, horses, cows, chickens, the whole deal. And so we converted one of the things in the barn to like a jam room, and I had to 4-track, and that's when I started writing like my first songs. And I would lay down like the vocal to the click or whatever, and then I would record the drums and the bass and the guitars, and basically just play all the instruments and write the song. And it was just super crude. It was just 4 tracks, but that was when I kind of just learned just as a songwriter.
There's so much that I can kind of tell that you haven't said yet, but I can feel it underlying, and that's the battle that you've had to go through just to make it in your career. I'm not even counting just and I appreciate, because that's something else we do talk about here, is rehab and addiction and mental health. So I'm glad that you say it so naturally, organically, because it is something that we need to talk about. Of course, yeah. There are people, if you're sick with a cold or an infection, you go to a doctor. Your brain is also something you need to go to a doctor for. So I know in my journey,
everybody should be in therapy.
Oh, agreed.
Just everybody in general, whatever kind of therapy works for you. But I feel like everybody needs something.
Agreed.
I think we go a little crazy. I mean, we all have our friends that we talk to and stuff, but
it's not the same. And that was a battle I fought for the longest time. While I'm, for me, struggling to make it in my early, and this is the parallel I'm going to make with you. When am I going to make it in radio, or my version to make it? I guess wanted a full-time radio job, and it took me 7.5 years because I went the on-air route, which is just more difficult than board hopping or anything like that. But mixed in with just the highs and lows people may normally have with their careers. I didn't know my family history of depression at the time, and it was a major struggle. So, I mean, I've been in therapy for 10 years or so I can't even imagine, you leaving your home and the band dynamics. I always say to people who tell me about their band history or even comics, I don't envy that life. It's because as hard as radio life is, those I feel are just those could be more difficult and lonely. So where did you, I can see in your personality why you connected with someone like Scott Weiland. And before I guess we continue, and I said the same thing to Doug Grion when we had him on. I know it's been a few years, but I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend. That that hit me hard as a fan. And I know I'm speaking for millions of fans, but for someone who knew him as much as you did. But I'm seeing just from this the almost 20 minutes we've been talking, why there was a connection between you two. So I guess where did you, unless you can tell me if I'm missing part of your story, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but where did you two souls meet, to sound a little cliche, because you seem like your path, you seem to kind of were destined to meet him. Was he the first big songwriter that you met, to kind of help you along with your career? Like when was your first big break?
Yeah, so Doug Grion actually gave me my first big break. So I was in Florida, and I was doing a record. I had a band called Harvest, and we did a record in 1998. And then we were doing another record, a second album in 2002. And I was the lead singer, and I wrote all the songs and produced the record and engineered it and mixed it and, all that crap. So my drummer, we were mixing the record, and my drummer, his name was Sean Snyder, he worked at Sam Ash Music in Florida, and he got a gig. He got transferred to Sam Ash out here in Canoga Park, California. So he left midway through mixing the record, but we kept in touch for like 4 years. And I guess it was after 9/11, so it was 2002, and I turned 30 or whatever it was, 31, I don't know. But I just had like an early midlife crisis, I guess. I decided that Florida was not cutting it for me musically. There was no music scene. The only music scene at the time was like, we're talking about like the early aughts, right? Like 2001, 2002, Tampa Bay. It was all just like death metal, or fucking, top 40 cover bands. So I was ready to get the hell out of there. I had stars in my eyes. I wanted to do the singer-songwriter thing. I jumped in my car. I had a studio. I closed down the studio. I broke up my band. I broke up with my girlfriend. I had a publishing company with my mom called Kazananda Publishing, where we published about 70 books over the course of 10 or 15 years.
Wow.
It was about 12 years. Yeah. Anyway, I just basically just packed it all up, and I packed my stuff into my car. I had an old Saturn called Able Mabel. It was a white Saturn, and that I bought from my girlfriend's parents, I think, at the time. Anyway, I had like $900, and I jumped in my car, and then I went to like different cities and did coffee house gigs, because coffee houses were pretty popular then. Like John Mayer was just coming out,
Okay.
So I would just do acoustic versions of my records, and then I would sell some CDs, and I would have a tip jar, and that would get me to the next town or whatever, And then I just spent some time driving around the country, and I was on the road for like 9 months. I went to Atlanta, I went to New York, played some shows in Greenwich Village and Midtown, Chelsea. I think I did a couple little acoustic things. Anyway, it's where my family was. So, and then I ended up in Wichita, where my friend Panhead was, and I ended up there. He had a bunch of gear, and he had a studio, but he didn't have an engineer or anybody that knew how to run it. So we put the studio together, and I ended up staying in Wichita for like 3 months, just producing bands. I did a record for a band, and I did one for their friends and their friends, and so on. And then I was using a software program called Sony Vegas, and so it was crazy because it was the early days of the DAW, 2002. Not early days, but it was early for me anyway. But I did a record in Vegas, but then I also used Vegas to edit the music video, because it was a program that did both. So it was pretty wacky. And then and then I made my way out to LA. That was like, I think I arrived in LA like September 31st or something, 2002. I left Florida April, so I was on the road for 6 months, basically.
Wow. I can't imagine
And I didn't
the
know,
life experience.
I didn't really
Yeah.
know where I was going to end up. I knew I wanted to be in one of the music cities, L.A., Nashville, or New York, or maybe Austin, But I had never been to L.A., and I'd never been to Nashville. I don't think I'd even been to Austin at that point. So I was I just got in my car and just kind of drove around, just drove across the country by myself and played coffee shops. And then when I landed in LA, again, I didn't know if I was going to stay or leave, but I stayed. Like as soon as I got here, I was hooked.
I admire the courage. I mean, did you ever at any point during those 9 months be like, what am I doing? Or you just knew like wherever you knew it was going to work out some way? Like where I'm going to end up somewhere and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have family, so, I knew that I would never have to be homeless, as long as you have like parents and friends,
True.
But I was dumb enough to think that everything was going to go my way. So, I was I wasn't worried at all, really. I was actually the opposite. I was super excited. I was sad that my band broke up and that I left, my folks behind, but I was super excited about the future. So, that's what I did. So then I ended up in LA.
Right on. So how long after when you were in LA did you meet Scott Weiland? Was he the first, I guess, big name, for lack of a better phrase of putting it, that you met? I'm wondering if you can just tell us about the first time that you met Scott.
Yeah, so back to my drummer, Sean Snyder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we kept in touch for I don't know how many years, right? And then when I came out to LA, when I was in Wichita, before I even got to LA, I was in Wichita for I think 6 months or something, and I kept in touch with him. So the day that I was leaving Wichita to come to LA, finally, he was leaving LA to move back to Florida. So we passed each other on like the 10 freeway at some point. After keeping in touch all that time, was having all these big plans to make music in LA. His job brought him back to Florida. So anyway, I ended up, but he introduced me to his friend that was a drummer named Mike Gilfone, and Mike Gilfone played drums with a girl named Emma that Doug Grion was producing with Scott at Lavish Studios.
Okay.
And so, yeah. So one of my first gigs in LA was working for IATSE, which is like the labor union, and there was like a Harley Davidson 100th anniversary concert, and STP played, and basically we're just like loading and unloading the STP trucks. That was like my first gig in LA.
Okay. That's cool.
And of course I didn't know anybody. I was just a local union guy. I wasn't in the union, but it's
Rocco the roadie. It's okay. It's part of your journey.
Exactly. And then I got a gig at the LA County Fair, running sound running front of house on a side stage, a little mariachi stage for like a week, and out in Pomona. And I was on my way back into town, and my car died. Old Abel Mabel shit the bed, and the one person that my drummer Sean introduced me to over the phone was Mike Gilfone. So I called. It was literally the only person I knew in LA, and I called him. I was like, "Hey man, remember me? We talked on the phone once." Anyway, he came out. I had my car towed, and he came out and picked me up. And on the way back, he's like, "Hey, you want to stop by and see my friend Doug? He works with Scott Weiland at his studio." And I said, "Yeah, fuck yeah, of course." So we stopped by. He introduced me to Doug. Doug didn't have an assistant engineer at the time, and I was looking for some kind of gig, and so Doug took me under his wing, and I worked at Lavish Studios while Scott was on tour with SDP in like 2002 or 3, and just like took out the trash, wrapped cables, swept the floors, that kind of shit.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. Were you intimidated to, had you engineered at all by that time?
Yeah, I was an engineer. I
Okay.
started engineering when I was like 15. So.
Oh, okay. You were a pro.
At this point, I was. Let's see. It was like 2002. So I was at like 30. I was 31 when I arrived in LA. I was 30 or 31.
Right on.
So yeah, so I'd already been engineering for like, 13 years or something or whatever.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah, and I was running front of house at the LA County Fair. It was a small stage, but it's it's a like a legit engineering gig. So anyway, so I started helping out Doug around the studio. Oh man, there's so many funny little anecdotes I can tell you. It's crazy. So I was introduced to Will, my friend Will, and he was a manager. Oh wait, no. First I worked at Guitar Center.
Oh.
I went and applied at Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, and I got the gig. And I got a call while we were closing, like as we were closing, that somebody was working on a movie set, and the sound mixer went down. So I went to the set with like a little Mackie board, and I walked into the sound stage at it's like Bronson Studios or something, and it was just all porn stars and strippers, and I didn't know what was going on. It turned out to be the set of a movie called The Girl Next Door.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that movie with Emil Hirsch. Is that the kid's name?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a porn convention scene that they turned an entire massive soundstage into a porn convention. It was
Nice.
Amazing. So then I just hit it off with that guy, David something or other. He was the production sound mixer, and so I decided, okay, maybe I'll have a career as like a boom operator or a production sound mixer for feature film. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me the ropes, and I spent like a month and a half on the set of Girl Next Door. I wasn't allowed to work because I wasn't on the gig, but he let me loiter and taught me stuff basically. And then we did
Oh, good.
a couple other ones. We did like Charlie's Angels 2. I was actually in that. I did a lot of background extra work too when I first moved to LA. I was in Kingpin. There was like a close up of me like smoking a bong, and I was totally clean and sober at the time. It was pretty funny. Kingpin was like Aaron Spelling's answer to The Sopranos for NBC, right? So so there was that, and then I played a dead Armenian.
I was thinking the movie with Bill Murray.
No, this was a TV show.
Got it. Okay.
Kingpin, and then I was on Entourage, like just walked by in the background.
Great experiences. I have friends who were extras.
Yeah, man, I would go and I would hang out at a movie set all day in the air conditioning, and cause I didn't have air in my shitty apartment, and I was in Tustin. And then
you're meeting people.
Yeah, I was hanging out with people. I'd bring my acoustic guitar, and we get free food, and you get to be on TV, and you get paid.
Right.
I was like, whatever. I don't have anything that day anyway. Yeah, so then I applied for the DGA to get into the Directors Guild to be an assistant director and, take that production path. But the DGA program was like impossible to get into. So, and then David, I think his name was Kelton or something, the production sound mixer. After we wrapped The Girl Next Door, then he went off to do 51st Dates with Drew Barrymore in Hawaii, or 51st Kisses, or whatever it was called.
51st Dates, yeah. No, I remember.
Yeah, 51st Kiss is what was on the call sheets every day, because that was the working title, but then they changed it before they released it. But yeah, so they, so by the time he got back, I was already working with Doug at that point. So, yeah, so that was my brief foray into production sound mixing, and so then I got a call from I think it was from Doug, and he asked me if I would run sound for Emma for the rehearsal. So, and my manager at Guitar Center wouldn't let me leave, so I just went to lunch and never went back. I just bailed, and then that gig ended, and then I met my friend Will, and he was a manager of Manny's Music, which was across from Guitar Center. And Manny's ended up being with Sam Ash later, and I ended up moving in with Will in Woodland Hills, and we were roommates. And I worked in the Guitar Center in the guitar department there at Manny's, and that's where me and my friend Jeremy Brown met. And Jeremy I ended up getting him introduced him to Scott. He was Scott's guitar player, and he passed away too. But so me and Jeremy would just there was like a TV cart for training the new people, and we would steal it and bring it down to the guitar department, and we would bring in Guns N' Roses DVDs and Led Zeppelin DVDs and just watch that shit all day because there was no customers. So Yeah. So, and at the meantime, I was doing that during the day with Jeremy, and then at night, I'd be at Lavish just helping out, wrapping cables, like I said, just doing whatever, And then Scott got home from his last tour with STP, and he kind of needed like an assistant or someone to kind of help out a little bit, So I'll drive him around or whatever, hang out with him. I was clean and sober at the time. So I was trying to be a good influence and whatever. I wasn't like a sober coach or anything officially, but I was just like, I just started helping him out. He was. I remember the moment I met him. I was at Lavish already, hanging out with Doug, and he walked in, and I was like, for some weird reason, I just felt like confident, and I made like a kind of a joke, kind of loud. I was like, just made like some kind of funny joke, and it was pretty funny, but Scott laughed too. But then he was like, "So who are you, man? What's up? What's your deal?" I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm gone," and he's gonna kick me out. And Doug was like, "No, he's cool, man. He's been helping me out, around the studio and stuff." So Scott was like, "All right, cool." And then that was it. From then on, we were just fast friends, and I would just drive him around and whatever. So yeah, and then one day I was at the studio and someone called, and I don't know if it was management or whatever, but Scott hung up the phone and said, Slash and Duff and Matt Sorum are going to come over. The guys from Guns N' Roses are going to come over to the studio tomorrow because we might do like a project or something, just see, maybe we'll just do a song for a soundtrack. We'll just see what happens. And I was like, all right, cool. So they came over, and it was fucking awesome. It just instantly clicked. It was amazing. So we did a song for The Italian Job, I think was the first one.
Yeah. Money? Was the cover of Money?
I think Floyd. Yeah, I don't know if that was first. Maybe Set Me Free was first. But yeah, they just basically, they came over and they played a bunch of stuff in the control room that they had recorded. Adam Day, Slash's guitar tech, used to record everything on CD, all the rehearsals and songwriting sessions and shit, jam sessions. So he had all that stuff cataloged, and then he gave it to Doug, and he put it in Pro Tools, and we'd chop it up and make songs out of it. And then eventually they brought all their gear over, which was fucking insane. They took up the entire studio. That it wouldn't even fit on the stage. They played on the floor. It was, Slash's massive stacks, Duff's massive stacks, Matt Sorum's huge drum kit. It was so fucking loud. And I ran sound for it I ran the monitors, so they could hear Scott's vocals and stuff, and put the guitars through there and stuff. So I was up on the stage running monitors, and I remember one day Slash looked up and was like, "Hey Rocco, can you give me more vocal in the wedge?" And I did it, and then he's like, "Cool, man," give me a thumbs up, and he turned around and he just played it fucking big chord, and I goosebumps on my spine. I was like, "Holy shit, I've made it." That was the moment when I was like, "Oh my god, what am I doing? Why am I here?"
That's cool. That's special.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Do you remember the first song they may have practiced together?
Well, they worked on stuff on the computer before they ever played live. Like I said,
Okay.
They had all these songs recorded, and they brought them all into Pro Tools, and we would chop them up and make the early VR songs out of them, And then we'd chop them up in Pro Tools. Scott would sing over it, and then Doug would bounce it out and give it to the guys, and then they would learn it. They would learn the new arrangement, and they would do it live. And then Adam would record it live to CD, or sometimes we'd record it in the control room at Lavish. And then so we had I don't know how many songs we had, and then we started shopping for a deal, and that's when it all started,
Wow. Before we even get to the whole VR ride, I'm just curious, as your role as an assistant, which can mean a variety of things. It's whatever he needs, but you're obviously his friend as well. So you started when STP was still around, right? When that was still
2003 I met Scott. So yeah, he was on tour. He came back. I can't remember which tour it was actually, but when 2003 the tour ended, he came home, and that's when we met. I was already working with Doug at Lavish when Scott was gone on tour when I started working there.
What were your thoughts of, you've become friends with this, for my generation, one of the best frontmen and songwriters. You don't seem the kind of person to be like, hey, you should do this, you should do that, kind of let him do his thing. Was there anything that maybe you wanted to see him do to try it with STP again? Were you blown away with the Velvet Revolver opportunity and be like, let's see where this goes? Of course, Scott with the many solo albums. Did you have any, I guess, input as an assistant? Was that part of your role, or was it just to, kind of just be there and, like you said, drive around?
Yeah, I actually secretly wrote all the Velvet Revolver lyrics. No, man, he didn't need any help, man. He was a fucking badass.
Well, I'm just curious of like what you like. I don't know. As a fan, as a music fan yourself, yes, you're there and you're helping. You're part of the team. But was there a certain journey that or did you want to see all of it happen? Were you sad, like maybe when SDP broke up?
I was just overwhelmed. I was like swept up in the fucking hurricane that was called The Project at the time. It didn't even have a name, but it was with those guys, with the GNR guys and Scott singing. It was fucking fire, and I was super stoked. It was literally just the band and me and the text. That was it. Witnessing this shit being written and born, and it was so fucking loud and powerful. And it was like I just felt like rock was losing its balls, and VR came at a good time.
Yeah,
to come back.
No, absolutely.
Bring it back a little bit. Yeah, I was just excited to have I was just excited as a fan, like to be like, oh, cool, I can have another rock album I can go buy. Except maybe I won't have to go buy it. Maybe they'll give me one. But that was where my head was at. And then I was, of course, thinking about my own career in terms of like, once this all settles down or whatever, at some point, maybe I'll, play a song for Scott or something. But I never really had the nerve. I mean, my whole life I've like, I don't know, I guess the thing that I probably identify as the most is a songwriter and producer. So, but for some reason, I had so much respect for Scott. Like I said, when I came out to LA, I was trying to be an artist, but I never was a good enough singer, but I didn't care. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Because I felt like I had the songs, but then when I spent some time in the studio with Scott, doing Set Me Free, like within 20 minutes, I was like, there's no way I'm doing this for a living. This guy's a fucking monster. I mean, he would build these chords, these chord voicings with his vocals, overdub, just layers, but he wouldn't know what any of it was theory-wise, but he knew it by the sound of it, and all the different characters that he played with his different voices for different songs and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is a whole other level. There's no way I could do this. So I told myself I'm just going to be a songwriter and producer and stay on this side of the glass. Well, because then I saw the process kind of in the making, and I realized, like, what if I put my ego aside and I can take my songs and have an amazing singer sing my songs? Then my songs would be a whole other fucking level, So that's what I did. I started working with singers, and that kind of launched that took my writing to like the next level. Once I started working with different other singers,
Okay. Who else did you? Yeah. Was that during the VR time that you were working with other singers, or you were completely devoted while that was going on to the VR? You had no time for anything else. I didn't really have time for. I was still writing like at night, my acoustic guitar, but I didn't have time to like record or do much. I mean, Doug gave me the keys to Lavish pretty quick, and I would go in there off hours and just record demos and shit. But I didn't really have time to do like a full production on anything because I pretty quickly became Scott's personal assistant, and it was a 24/7, 365 gig. There was no days off. There was no hours of operation. I was always open, So, whatever he needed at any time of the day or night, I had to jump. That was the gig, But he was the biggest rock star in the world at the time, and I was fresh off the boat, so I did it. I sucked it up. I didn't want to be a personal assistant. I had never any interest in. I was the guy. It was hard for me. I was the guy that needed a personal assistant. I was a fucking idiot losing his keys and couldn't tie my shoes. And I could write a song, but I couldn't. And so for me to like try to organize someone else's life in this whirlwind of this huge rock band. It was kind of hilarious and stupid, but we figured it out. We figured it out. Yeah,
and made it work. He had never had an assistant before, and I had never been an assistant before, so
Wow.
We both fucked up a lot. We both apologized a lot. And it's fine at the end of the day, you know.
No, that's beautiful. I think that in the end, I just look at that as two friends kind of helping each other out. So when did you transition? Because you still were able to display how talented you are with photography, with filmmaking, with Velvet Revolver. So when did the transition go to, you know, hey, this is our friend Rocco, this is Scott's assistant Rocco, to let's make a video, let's make some documentaries. You know, you're responsible for some, you know, for documenting some great stuff in Velvet Revolver history. So how did that transition come about?
So I just had like a Canon Sure Shot or something, like a point and shoot, you know, some bullshit camera, and like no one was taking pictures or documenting any of this, and I just felt like it was worthy. So I started taking pictures with the little point and shoot camera and whatever, and then showing them to the guys, and they liked them. So like the first thing that I ever like had in the world of my like anything that I had done was the tour program for the Contraband tour.
Okay.
They used the centerfold was all backstage, behind the scenes, offstage stuff that I took. They were all photos that I took. So they asked me if I had any good photos. So I sent them a CD with all the photos to look through, and next thing I know, they sent me the program, and it was all my photos in the centerfold. So that was exciting. That was like super cool, and that's when I really, because I always had an interest in the visual arts, but I was just always so obsessed with writing songs and producing that I never really, pursued it. So because I didn't have time to like write and produce music because I was working for Scott, but I did have time to just to take pictures because I could do that while I'm working, basically. Sure. So that's what I did. I was like, all right, I'll just pursue this video thing because Scott seems to like it, and they use some stuff, so maybe I'll do videos. So then, that was it. So for the Contraband record, I was his personal assistant, and I ended up. Then we did the record at NRG, and with Josh Abraham, we did the vocals at Lavish, and then I kind of figured I didn't know what the future held. I just figured once I go on tour, that's it. I'm out of a gig. My job's done. Maybe I'll see him when he gets back or something. And then that moment came that really changed my life. That I was praying for. That he pulled me aside and was like, "Hey man, when we go on tour, I want you to be like, if you want, like, come on the road with me and like be my assistant on tour." And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So that was life changing. That was awesome.
I can't even imagine. How did again with you taking pictures? Thankfully you had a quality camera and your work was noticed. How did that go to being a director? And most notably, it premiered 12 years ago this month, if you can believe it. The Last Fight, which was of course off the second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
12 years ago this month.
August 20th, 2007.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Time flies.
I think it hit like number 9. I just remember it hit number 9 on the VH1 Top 20 countdown, and I remember calling my mom and told her I directed a top 10 music video.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. That's a great moment.
Well, she was there. I mean, she was there. She flew out when we shot the video. I'll get to that later.
Okay.
So yeah, just from like taking pictures and stuff, and then I was the personal assistant for the Contraband tour, and then after that tour. Actually, before the Contraband tour was even over, I quit. Like, I quit a couple times.
Really?
Yeah, because just, he was going through a rough time, So, when we're going through rough times, we're not always the person we want to be to our friends, And sometimes the people we love the most get hurt the most. And, I was just one of the casualties of the war on drugs.
Understood.
And,
yeah.
I was one of the casualties of his war on his drugs. But it was fine. We were still friends. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was just too hectic. I won't go into details, but
Understood.
I just couldn't do it. So I quit, and Scott was amazing. It's funny because he would get super bent out of shape about little things, like if I forgot something or screwed something up. But when I had to tell him something really big, he was like totally cool about it. Like, I was dreading telling him that hey man, like I'm gonna quit. I don't want to work for you anymore. And this is literally in the middle of the world tour for Contraband. Like, it's the height of the everything. And I was like, I'm gonna bail, man. I'm gonna go make a record. I had all these songs, and all this traveling. I mean, look, I didn't even have a passport before I met Scott. So like, and then I'm traveling the world, and it's just like, oh man, I can't even begin to try to describe to you the intense emotional roller coaster that it was. It was beyond anything I could even imagine. Like, some of the worst times of my life, obviously the absolute best times of my life. Mm-hmm. But the stress and the pressure and the timelines and the travel and just everything. I was like, I'm done, but all of that stuff, it inspired me to write. So I was writing more than ever in my hotel rooms at night on tour, like on my acoustic guitar. And so I had like a batch of songs, and then we went through Wichita on tour, and I met a singer named Jen, and we decided to like do a project. So anyway, yeah, I quit, and Scott was cool about it. He's like, obviously, I'm a songwriter too. I know what it's like to have songs in your in your brain that you want to try to get out. And so he respected my decision, and he supported me 100%, and told me to let me know when the record's done, and he'll pass it along and all that stuff. So it was cool. So I gave the gig to my friend Panhead, and he became Scott's personal assistant for a while. And then that was it. And then the Contraband tour ended, and they took a break, and they started writing for Libertad. And then I got a call from Duff. I remember putting an ad on Craigslist, like, because I was filming everything on the Contraband tour. Just like, filming and photographing just with my own crappy equipment. Mm-hmm. And then so after I quit, I locked out a studio in a basement in Wichita, Kansas for a month. I just paid for it. And I want to make this record of my songs, my third solo record. And I couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't, I couldn't focus. And, it wasn't, I was clean and sober, but it was just like, I just couldn't focus. The whirlwind was so intense that I needed like a couple months to really decompress, and to relax and to just focus and get my thoughts together, because it was just so. I mean, I literally had PTSD. My phone would ring and my heart would pound and I would jump, because it was like, okay, what
does Scott need?
What did he need, or what went wrong, or what's the drama, or what's someone at the label screaming at me, or somebody.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Constant. It was a lot. It was a lot. So anyway, the point is, I wasted a month in the studio, and went back to LA. And then the singer that I was working with ended up moving to LA, and we ended up doing 4 songs at Matt Storm's. Matt Storm let me use the studio. He went into rehab at some point in between the 2 VR records, and I would house sit for him. Sometimes I would house sit for Dave, and when those guys would go away. And so I house sat for Matt for a little bit and fed his koi fish and used the studio and made a demo. And my buddy Mike Fasano, drum tech, killer drummer, he played drums on it. And then Matt played drums in 2 songs, and Mike played drums in 2 songs. And my friend Kevin Smith engineered it, and I wrote it, produced it. Kevin mixed it, and I finally got like 4 songs that were representative. And it wasn't until then that in my life, when it was after Contraband, that I finally had, I was probably 34 or something, that I finally had songs that I felt were that were worthy, to pass along to like industry folk. So I was a late bloomer for sure. I mean, I was an early bloomer in getting into it, but I was a late bloomer in finally getting to where I thought I was happy.
I hear you. Yeah, no, I identify a lot with that. So I guess, whose idea was it for you to, I guess, make the video now that you're back in with them? Like, was there?
So yeah, okay, yeah. So I did the project was called 2-Bit Floozy. It was me and I played everything with the drums, and I had a singer named Jen. So So then I was, I was like putting out on Craigslist, like videographer available, whatever. And then I got a call from Duff out of the blue saying, and he was like, "Hey man, I heard you're going to come back and work for us and film everything." And I was like, at that time I hadn't heard, I guess management was supposed to call me first, but they didn't. So that's how I found out. And he basically offered me the gig and told me. So I went down to SIR rehearsals, and everybody was like, "Hey, Rocco!" They were like super happy to see me, and I was super happy to see them. And I had the camera on my shoulder, and then so I put together like a plan for. So it was like MySpace, and I think that was pretty much it. It was like Friendster. It was like Friendster, and then Napster, and then MySpace, and I handled the MySpace for the band. Remember we had like the top 8?
Yeah. When you had to rank your friends.
Yeah. So of course I put myself in the top 8 on the Revolver MySpace.
Okay.
Next thing you know, I'm like internet famous, and like I'd be setting up. Like all this crap on the drum riser at the shows, like on tour, and people in the crowd would like yell my name because they would recognize me.
That's so funny. That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, I put together the thing. I called it something stupid like VRIPE or something. Velvet Revolver Internet Presence Empire, and it was just a plan of what I'm going to do, right? Because they didn't really know enough about any of this. Quote unquote internet stuff at the time, so they were kind of counting on me. I think my official title that I think Duff made up was technology liaison. And so in the tour books they would give to the band and crew and the wives and everything before you leave on tour. My title was technology liaison. It was pretty funny. Everybody asked, but none of the local crew knew what the hell I did. They were like, "What do you do, man?" I'm like, "Oh, I just like fix their Blackberries and their laptops."
What is it you do here? That's so
yeah, exactly. So I presented them. I sat them all down. I was like, "All right, guys, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be your videographer. I'm going to be your photographer. I'm going to post every other week. I'm going to do like a text post, and then like once a month I'll do a video post." And I laid out like how much it would cost if they hired all separate people to do it, and how much they would save if they just had me do everything. Nice. And then I told them how much I wanted, and then I waited a few days, and I got the call from management saying that I got the gig.
Beautiful.
And then that's how it started. And so then he had an assistant that was like, taking care of him. So I was just strictly focusing on, for the whole Libertad, the writing and the recording and the touring. I was just strictly the documentarian, just filming and photographing everything.
I'm sure that was actually a lot less stress on you. Or perhaps were you worrying more since you knew him so well? And maybe that you thought that where were you when you weren't going to be his assistant, but you were still involved? I guess, how did you approach that? Where you're like, okay, great, I'm doing what I actually want to do. Or since he's your friend and he's struggling, that you wanted to be close to him again? Was there any sort of inner turmoil there?
No, I mean, I was still close to him. We still worked together every day, but instead of fetching his coffee, I was just pointing a camera at him.
Nice. Okay. And okay. I know I'm not going to keep you. I appreciate the time you've given me. Did you write the script, like everything, or did you just direct the video for the last fight? Did you? Because there's so many great pictures online of you directing Slash, or you can see you and Scott at a table, and he's taking notes while you're talking to him. So just real beautiful photos of you guys filming and behind the scenes.
I think that was either Gene Kirkland or John Harrell. One of those, both of those guys were there that day taking photos. So those were one of their photos. Both great guys, good friends of mine. So after the layout tour program photos, and then they hired me on to do just filming and photographing for Libertad. I started doing for a minute they were called, before they were webisodes, there was like a year that people were calling them vlogs, like video blogs.
Yeah.
I put out like 4 vlogs. It's such a stupid word. I don't even want to say it.
No dumber than selfie,
I put out 4 short promo videos pieces, and they really loved them. Like, there was no notes for any of them, no changes. Like, they just went with my cut, and that was it. So they asked me to do like a behind the scenes. So then we were working at Henson Studios for Libertad, and filmed everything. Brendan O'Brien, and of course, I was into it as a filmmaker, but I was also into it as record producer, because I'm filming everything that Brendan O'Brien does and stealing all his tips and tricks, So that was cool. And then I put together like a little 10-minute piece called, it was just about the making of the record. I don't know what they called it. They made up a name for it. I think it was like, I think they put it out in the UK with some covers. They did like a UK EP of covers, and then plus this was when enhanced CDs were super popular at the time. They were like the latest thing. So you'd buy a CD, and you'd also get like a DVD with it, or like the CD, and you could put it in your computer, and it would play videos and shit.
Yes. So yeah, I had that for Velvet.
Yeah. So it was called Melody and the Tyranny, I think was the EP, and it was like Psycho Killer and Can't Get You Out of My Head and whatever other covers we did during the Libertad sessions, and they threw those on a product with one of my videos and called it Melody and the Tyranny. So that was cool. That was like a 10-minute thing, and they loved that. And then they asked me to do like a 30-minute thing. So the projects kept getting bigger and bigger. So I took all the footage that I had shot on tour. We did a South American tour with Aerosmith, and it was just absolutely the most fucking insane, mind-bending thing I'd have ever experienced. I mean, we did like the Quilmes Rock Festival. Like the shows were like 60,000, 80,000 people.
Wow.
And it was all private jet. We were hubbing out of London. We were at the Mandarin Oriental. And that was actually the end of my sobriety. That's a whole other story. So I did I put together a 30-minute piece about the tour in South America. And they used that. When you bought Libertad, you could buy the Best Buy edition. And that came with a DVD that had all my videos on it, like a 30-minute documentary about South America. It's called Tierra Roja, Sangre Roja. And then it had another 15-minute thing that I did. I don't know, just like a bunch of my videos and shit. So that was cool. And then, and then shortly after I quit, and then like a few months later, the band broke up. Oh, so the video, so the last fight. So after the 30-minute documentary, after Tierra Roja, then we're getting ready to do. So we did the first video from Libertad was insane. It was Dean Carr. It was like one of my best friends, genius. He did the video for She Built Quick Machines, which was amazing.
I love that.
It looked exactly like Clint Eastwood. It was so dope.
Yeah.
So he did that, and then for the second video, they asked me if I would want to write a treatment for it. So I wrote a treatment for it, and I think Scott probably loved it more than the band. He always was, I don't want to say he was a fan, but he always was very encouraging, and he would always tell me that. Like, I don't think he really saw me as a record producer, because up until that point, I really had not done anything that I was proud of. So I maybe played him a couple of little bullshit things. So I don't think he saw me as a producer. He saw me more as an engineer, but as a filmmaker, And so he always encouraged me with filming,
That's cool.
So it was really cool. So so he loved the treatment that I wrote, and then I figured, okay, well, that's as high as that's going to go. That they're going to get they'll probably get a big name director to direct it, obviously, because it's Velvet Revolver. But then they asked me if I wanted to direct it, and so I was like, I'd never directed anything in my life, so I was like, sure, I'll direct it. I don't really know what that means, but let's figure it out. And my assistant, I had an assistant at the time, Andy. He had gone to film school, so he basically taught me how to direct, like in my backyard. I just wrote notes and then went and did it.
Wow, that's so cool. I love it. Your whole story is so inspirational, and we haven't even touched on so much, because nothing came easy. You fought for everything. You knew the experiences that you needed to have to get where you wanted to be. Fearlessness, so much fearlessness to drive cross country by yourself, to take these challenges head on. It's not like you kind of went up through. I use a lot of sports analogies. It's not like you went to single A and double A and triple A. You went from making your living in the minor leagues, I guess, if you want to call it that, to all of a sudden the major leagues with Velvet Revolver, and just having everything thrown at you, and you handling it and being successful at it.
whether it's being a director or being Scott Weiland's assistant. I mean, those are two very specific, difficult jobs to have, and you handled it, and that speaks a lot about you. And that's not even counting. Those are just stresses for anybody. That's not even counting the inner turmoil or battles or journeys that you were going on. Because I was going to ask, because for me, I it's been in December. It will be 4 years for me without a drink. Nice. There are certain. I did. My therapist forced me to go to AA, even though I felt I was more of a pothead than anything, but I would still drink alone, to be like George Thorogood. I would drink in the afternoon just so I could fall asleep. And she knew the dangers of that and the structure of AA, and being on medication. I'm not going to pretend to say, hey, I'm 100%. There are certain things that our culture is more lenient on that have become legal here in New York, some in other places.
So basically what you're trying to say is you're on the marijuana maintenance program.
Yeah, it was something like that. But with alcohol, it was dangerous for me, and I knew that. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't care, I guess, at the time. And we can, if you ever, of course, you're always welcome to come back on. We can talk about, because I've done a whole episode with a former GNR manager, Alan Niven, about depression and addiction and everything. We can hammer that home. But I guess to fast forward, how are you today? I guess please let us know everything. Of course, professionally, personally, because you've suffered a lot of loss. So how are you just today? How are you handling yourself today, personally and professionally?
It's it's hit or miss. Depends on the week.
Sure.
It's easy to slip into party mode in LA.
Yeah.
And then so I kind of vacillate between party mode and work mode, and I've always had a hard time finding a balance. Where I just get in a zone where I'm like in the studio or whatever, just writing, and I just get obsessed and I don't leave. And no one hears from me, and then I'll just completely switch gears and just be in party mode and just be partying all the time. So it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to find that balance, but I'm working on it.
It's a journey.
Yeah, I mean, so it was like 20 years I think I was clean and sober, and we were on tour. We were going to, I think we were like between Detroit and like some other city, and we were on the bus, and everybody had their own bus, and so it was Scott and I like on the. Dave and Duff shared a bus because they didn't smoke, and then Slash had his own bus because he smoked, and Scott and I were on the other bus, and so it was May 15th, 1997.
You're good with dates.
Sorry. May 15th, 2007. It was my 20-year, because I went into rehab May 15th, 1987 when I was 16.
Got it.
In Florida. Yeah, so it was 2007, and we were up late on the bus, and it was midnight. It hit midnight, and I was like, hey, man, I'm 20 years sober right now. And he's like, dude, that's amazing. That's congratulations. Give me a big hug, whatever. And I was like, pour me a glass of wine.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
And he just laughed. And he was like, haha, that's very funny. And I was like, no, dude. Like, seriously, I've never tasted, because I had never tasted wine.
Wow, okay.
And I just felt obligated. I'm a 36-year-old Italian man. I'd never tasted wine. I felt like, and when I went into rehab, it was like a family thing, right? So, like, they make your parents participate in everything. You don't just drop your kids off.
Right.
It was called Straight Incorporated. It was part of the whole, like, Just Say No campaign, the Nancy Reagan, the war on drugs, the fucking ridiculousness. But, so my parents got clean when I got clean, basically. So they had both gone back to drinking, like after 18 years and 20 years they were sober. And I was coming up on 20 years, and they were fine. They were just like, you were all different people after 2 decades. You're just a different person 20 years later. So I was like, I really feel like I can handle it. I was never a big drinker anyway. I never really liked to take the taste of alcohol. I would always rather smoke weed. So
me too, but that's when I knew I had a problem. When I'm
drinking liqueurs. I basically, when I took care of I thought I was doing a good. Well, I guess I did do a good thing. I moved in with my grandparents when my grandfather was dying of cancer, and he wasn't a big drinker, but in his den there were so many bottles of liquor that he would get as gifts because he was a pharmacist for 50 years in Brooklyn, and and since I was in Brooklyn away from all my friends on Long Island and my marijuana hookups, I drank that thing dry. And I didn't even like it. And, my mom would be like, "Are you okay?" I don't think any of them really understood until I would tell my therapist what I was doing. And she's like, you have to do something. Otherwise, I'm going to call the police on you. I'm like, okay. Yeah. I mean, and I love my therapist. So I took everything she said to heart. I mean, without her, I probably would be dead, if anything. Yeah. But no, and I get that. I see what you're saying because you're a different person. You're right. So I can understand that completely, and it's a whole journey.
I spent 2 decades going to AA almost every single day.
Wow.
I changed the people, places, and things that
people, places, and things. With. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I had to, and so I didn't even have any friends that did drugs at that time,
Okay.
And then I moved to LA and started working with in the rock business, and obviously everybody did drugs. So, anyway, so I finally convinced him that I wasn't joking, that I was serious, that I'm going to actively decide to relapse, and I felt like he was the one to do it. So he poured me a glass of wine, and we toasted to sobriety.
Oh man, you laugh. You have to laugh because that's a special moment. It's obviously. Yeah. I'm glad that you're still around. There are people in my life who I've lost, and people who thankfully have survived. I'm sure we're not the only ones, but I'm glad that you're still here. And as I said before. I know I speak for millions of fans where it was just such people may have perhaps seen it coming. I don't know how else to phrase it, but that doesn't make it any easier or any less of a loss. So, again, I'm glad you're around. You've told some very cool Scotch stories, and I really do appreciate it. And I can't even imagine what else we can discuss. But before I go, I want to tell people what you're doing now and the best way for people to reach out to you or contact you, website and social media, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, cool. My Instagram is just Rocco Music. All my stuff is just Rocco Music. I don't really use Twitter, but So let's see, where do I start? So 2014, I think, Scott and Doug parted ways, and Scott asked me to run studio, Lavish. And so he wanted to open it to the public, because it was always just like his private studio.
Oh,
private sandbox things. So I went in and, just kind of cleaned it up a little bit, freshened it up, got some new gear, did some strategic partnerships and endorsement deals and that kind of thing. Got some equipment that we needed, and to try to compete as a commercial studio in LA. I got an MCI console from New York and had that commissioned and put everything together. And then we were going to do a label. He had Soft Drive Records, but that never really took off. So I kind of had a new vision for Soft Drive with a new business model kind of laid out, and me and him and Lucas Keller, we're going to be partners with it. And I found a band through my friend Mark Walbaum. He brought me a band called, they were called Rocks Waves at the time. The record came out as Turquoise Noise. So that was our first signing, and that was going to be our big moment out of the gate as a new label, a fresh new label, and commercial studio. And then before the record, I worked on that record for about probably a year and a half, I think, on and off, and then before the record came out, he passed away. So, yeah, we were actually, I was actually at Lavish with the band, with Turquoise Noise, and we were celebrating, it was the last day of tracking before we started mixing. And so we were celebrating. We're having a little party. We'll get together at the studio. when I got the call about Scott. Actually, it was a text from Dave Kushner.
Okay.
I saw a tweet that Dave Navarro did. I think that's how I found out.
Oh, you found that from a tweet? Oh, that sucks.
Well, I found out from a text message.
I thought I heard the Dave Kushner thing. I thought Dave Navarro tweeted first. Maybe I
That's how I think Dave Kushner found out from Dave Navarro's tweet name.
Well, you don't want to find out that.
Whatever it was, but yeah. Anyway, so
Got it.
Yeah, man, that was fucked up. That was really fucked up, man. So yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm just so sorry for the loss of your friend, and it was over the course of the conversation, all the losses that you've suffered. But it's what I tell my younger brothers, or one of my best friends who thankfully survived a suicide attempt. There are so many other people around that care about you, and you are far removed from the person who moved to LA with no friends. I'm sure you have a ton of friends. You come from it sounds like your family is awesome. Great. So it's just so awesome that you're still here, that you've battled, and this is such a minor part of your journey, but this is a big part for me. Just a chance to talk to you and to be inspired by your story. And this is just just a drop in the bucket. So if and when you take your songwriting to, if you want to expand and maybe put out an autobiography, would you just do me a favor and call it Rocco's Modern Life? Can you do that? It's spelled differently, so no lawsuits, right?
No trademark infringement there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, so that's what happened. So I wanted to tell you the way that I really got the gig. So Jeremy and I were working at Manny's, and a call came over, and I was working like at night with VR, like during rehearsals, like here and there. Like they were just trying to set up the PA system at Lavish or something, and so Jeremy and I were like watching like Zeppelin. I think the BBC sessions had just come out. We were watching it. We would steal the TV from the training room and wheel it down to the guitar department. And so we were just hanging out, and over the what the hell do you call it? The PA or whatever at the store, the manager was like, or someone was like, Rocco / on line 3, ho ho ho. And so I was like, yeah, that's funny. And so I went and I picked up the thing, and it was actually Slash. And he's like, hey, man, we're over here at Lavish. We're trying to turn the PA on. Can you like walk me through it? And I was like, man, I don't know if I can walk you through it over the phone, but I can definitely come and show you how to do it. So I had my manager was, not my manager. My manager was my friend Will. It was like the department manager, the guitar department manager guy, whatever. And I was like, hey man, that's actually Slash on the phone, and he needs me to go. They're doing a project with Scott, and they need me to turn on the PA. And I don't know if he just didn't believe me or what. And he's like, no man, I need you here. And it was literally just me and Jeremy, like 8 hours a day, all day. There was no fucking customers. Everybody went to Guitar Center. There was this massive mega store across the street. Nobody came to me. So I was like, this is so lame. So I was like, here, talk to him. I put the manager on the phone with Slash, and the dude was like, oh, that was the thing about it, right? Because so Velvet Revolver, the manager, I won't say her name because she doesn't deserve it.
Okay.
She gave Slash the number at Manny's to call me because I was so broke my cell phone was turned off, and so that's why they had to page me.
Oh wow!
And then they were like, "Can you come up and set up the PA?" And I put the phone. I gave the phone to the manager, and he talked to Slash, and the manager was like, "No, man, I really need Rocco here today." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, this is fucking. I was like, "Fuck this," because literally Jeremy and I would just sit around and dream about, I hope it turns into something. I hope they actually end up doing like a record or like a full album, and that would be so dope, just as fans,
Right.
And then when I got the call to come and set up the PA, and the manager wouldn't let me, I was like, "Fuck this!" So I did the same thing that I did like a few months before at Guitar Center. I did the same thing at Manny's. I just left. I told them, "All right, I'm going to lunch," and I just left, and I never went back.
Beautiful.
That was the last day job I ever had. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Then we were doing, when we first did Soft Drive Records, it was like a joint venture with Sony BMG. We had distribution through them, Sony Red, and we had to do like a promo video for the executives at Sony to say hi. Thanks for doing this project with us, this label with us and stuff. And so he wanted to do a video for a song called Happy. And he needed like a band, like a fake band. So just to like, he didn't have a real band at the time, like a solo band. So I got my friend Jeremy to go up and play in the fake band for the fake video. And I never made a full length video out of it. I just did like a snippet of it. And then that's how Scott met Jeremy. And then Jeremy used to come down to San Diego with me. Me and him and Scott would ride down to Coronado Island where Mary lived at the time. And I would drop Scott off with Mary and the kids, and I would go to a little hotel, and Jeremy and I would just hang out and run around Coronado all weekend. And then we would pick him up like Sunday night and go drive back to LA. So the three of us got tight. And then when Scott needed a guitar player for his solo band, he asked me because he had never even seen Jeremy play guitar. It was just like the three of us hanging out. And then he asked me one day if Jeremy was actually an actual guitar player. I was like, yeah, no, he's like legit. Like he's great, and so when he was crewing up for the Wildabouts band, I think it started with the Happy Galoshes record. We went up to Chicago, and Jeremy came up and played guitar with Steve Albini, and we did that record. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. Sorry.
It's all good. No, I appreciate all your stories, and everyone has like a unique twist to it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I hope you can edit this so I don't sound like an idiot.
You don't sound like an idiot. No, you sound, just like me or any of my listeners, just somebody who's chased a dream, and every time something unique happens to them, they like, I can't believe this happened. And you look back on your life the way it used to be, and how did I get here? So you just sound real, like very humble and organic of everything coming up, and just talking about your friends that happen to be Velvet Revolver and Slash and Scott and all of them. I guess
that's where we were getting to, bridging to where I am now. Okay, so 2014, I started running Lavish, and then right as we were getting Lavish up and running, my dad passed away, and then in like August of 2014, and then Jeremy passed away in March of 2015, and then I called my friend Nick Mayberry, and he came and auditioned. He got the gig, and then Scott passed away on December 3rd, 6th. I can't remember. I feel bad. I should know that. Anyway, so then by the end of 2016, and then it was like Lemmy and Bowie and fucking. It was just crazy. So that was like the summer. Tom Petty, yeah. Well, yeah, it was a little later maybe.
December 3rd, by the way, 2015.
December 3rd, yeah. So summer of 2016 was the darkest point in my life, the lowest point. It was fucking brutal. When Scott passed, it was like it was definitely the end of an era for me. I mean, not only for rock and roll, but and yeah, of course. And then, like, what was it? A year later, we had Cornell and Chester. But the first I mourned him as a friend. Like I just missed my friend. Like, and then I mourned him as like an artist. I guess I miss having the studio too. Like I also lost my job, when he passed away. Like I also had no income.
I get it.
And was out of a gig, and I also didn't have a studio or any equipment or anything to like make any music. And then it kind of dawned on me. Oh yeah, I also lost like everyone else. Like we lost Scott Weiland. No more new Scott Weiland music ever. And so that was like threefold the way it hit me. It was like, my career as a producer and as a songwriter, and also as my friend, and also as a fan, and all that ended along with like other people in my family. I lost a bunch of people, and so yeah, summer of 16 was pretty fucking brutal. I went down a really, really dark path, and things got really scary for a while, and then and then I started going to therapy, and I got on Prozac. They prescribed that. That was I wasn't. I don't really like pills, especially since pills had recently taken two of my friends, and I've never been a big fan of pills, and so I actually had the prescription for Prozac for like a month before I even filled it. I didn't want to take it, but it was just getting so. I would just stare up at the rafters and see if they would hold my weight, when the time came. And so my wife told me that, maybe I should, and my therapist and my family, they were all telling me maybe I should try to go on some kind of antidepressant or something. So,
yeah, man.
Dave Kushner, and, he was always a big supporter, so.
I love Dave. Dave has been on the show twice, and grateful for him to speak about with his time with Scott and Chester. But I totally know what you're saying. When I first went to therapy, I did not want to take any sort of medication. It was after 3 months, my therapist said, "You need to take something, otherwise I can't see you anymore. Because otherwise, I can keep taking your money, but you will not get better." So it took a few years for me to finally accept it. Where I think that's a problem with the stigma, where if you are diabetic, you need to take insulin, and you feel it's more tangible. Your brain has certain balances where you just think it's a certain behavior, and you don't equate that with a body part going wrong or feeling, achy when you get the flu. So, I'm on 40 milligrams of Cymbalta, and I need it. Last time I tried to wean myself off it, I would just get so angry so quickly, and I'm already an angry little Jew. I can't be any more angrier than I need to be. But yeah, I've been in those dark places, and I'm a big champion of therapy and medication, and I'm glad your wife in your corner and being around, because it's so hard. Because you might feel like, I'm the last man standing. What else is there? But there's always somebody or something that, even if you don't believe it, tell yourself that there's got to be one purpose to give yourself in life to live, even if that's for somebody else. Even if when you
the
don't.
One thing that kept resonating through my mind when I was at my most suicidal was my dad used to say, "Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem." Mm-hmm. And that just kind of, was just a stupid saying, but
it's not a stupid saying, because I'd hear that all the time, even from and Dave. I told Dave Kushner this, but that's how I lost my dad, was through suicide.
Wow.
And that was back in 2013, and that's something that he used to say, and we always knew he had emotional problems. We just never knew the depths of it. So that's how I always felt about Scott. I include him absolutely with and I'm not talking about like songwriting or being just on the pantheon of rock heroes. I include him when I talk about Robin Williams or Chester Bennington, or because what I asked Guarino, do you consider that a slow suicide, what he was doing? And he said yes. And that's how I felt what I was doing. I don't like saying I was not strong enough to ever make an actual attempt, but I was definitely committing slow suicide, just waiting for something to happen and helping it along. So it's.
I guess here's the thing. It is a slow suicide, right? In all reality, but I don't think that was his intention, and I don't think that's a lot of people's intention when they're. I think they're not trying to die. I think with the drugs, they're trying to live.
Okay.
They're trying to be happy and feel better, but there's a lot of pain. And look, when you get. The older you get, the more times you fuck up, the more guilt and shame and regrets you have. And that just fuels more drug use. And the drug use makes you fuck up more and have more things to feel guilty about and regret. It's a vicious cycle. So self-forgiveness is huge, that's the battle that we all go through, right? It's like, how much have I hurt the people around me? How irresponsible have I been? Why would I deserve any of this? And that's, even though I'm not a rock star, I work with them, and I know the battle that goes on. And even for me, in my head, I was a rock star. You know what I mean? Like in my world, just a kid from a small town in New York. I felt like I was on top of the world, and so to me, I just didn't understand why. I didn't understand why it was happening to me, or why I deserved it, and why other people were smarter than me and better than me, and all this stuff, and why was I getting these opportunities, and that that just made me want to do drugs. So after Scott passed, like I said, everything happened, and I just kind of went through a really dark place, and then I got therapy and got Prozac and everything else, and then I had some other health issues, diagnosis, and that was really heavy to deal with, and then just my personal life problems and stuff. So it's been a rough go, but I met I got a call from I was doing a session at my friend Christopher Thorne's house. He used to have a bitchin' studio.
Sure, I know Chris. He's been on. I actually went to go see Blind Melon at La Poussin Rouge. Was it last year or 2 years ago? And actually got to hang out backstage with them a little bit. He's a great guy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's great, man. He's one of my favorite people. And so I was using his studio for some things, and I was doing a record. My friend Josh Bassett. I was producing my friend Josh's record, and we were, I think we were mixing at we were mixing at Kushner's studio, and then we were mixing at Christopher Thorne's studio, and Chris was going to a party that night, and he's like, if you guys wrap up early, come to this party. It's my friend Rami. He plays keyboards in the Foo Fighters. He's got a studio in Van Nuys. So we went, and I met Rami, and then we kept in touch for like a year. This was like 2016, like October, or like late 2016 that I met Rami, and then we kept in touch on Facebook, and then they were having a party in 2000. No, I'm sorry. That was 17. So a year later, this was like October 2018. They were having another party at Phono, like a year later, and I hit up Rami and to kind of say hi, and then he hit me up to run sound. So I went and ran sound, and then I met Jeff, the studio manager, and Jeff really Jeff kind of saved my life in a way. Jeff and Ron, the studio owner, and Rami, those guys. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it wasn't looking good for me. It was dark. It was really dark.
Say no more. I know what that means, and whenever I talk about my experiences versus yours or versus a guest, I don't say it in a place of like, oh, look what I've done. I'm saying it in place of all the listeners, of saying how common these problems are. So I'll just use for me as an example of how dark it could be. I just remember sitting on my IKEA couch in my apartment, just like kind of sitting back and forth, just saying the word suicide over and over again. Just kind of like program my brain. I'm like, I'm committing to being this sad, and it's amazing how that just was only maybe a couple years ago. And, in a month, I'm probably moving to Queens. Well, I am moving to Queens with my girlfriend, my most successful relationship that I've ever had, which would not have happened if I didn't get sober from alcohol and go to AA and go to therapy and all these things. So I can only imagine. And again, I'm glad for someone who's just met you. This is our second phone conversation. I'm really glad that you're still around to not just for your friends and family and to continue to create new projects, but to keep the memory of Scott alive, by telling stories. And so I'm wondering if it's a quick story we can end here. I shared a picture which I didn't realize that it was yours until you commented on it. It's I guess it's in a plane or a bus. You see Dave Kushner looking at his laptop with his hands on each side of his face, like he's kind of frustrated or trying to pay attention. And on one side of him is Duff laying down on a cot or a side bed like he's a vampire with his hands crossed over his heart. And then on the other side is Scott Weiland with the biggest grin on his face with Slash's top hat. And no Slash there, no Matt Sorum, but you took the picture. Was that just a random funny moment, or is there a story behind that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Scott got a lot of flack for like being like, I don't know, man. He was so funny. Like, it bums me out, man, that nobody ever really got to see his funny side. He was so funny. We would laugh You know, it was just, we had a lot of good times. And I've got like 100 hours of like video footage of just us on the road that no one's ever seen. Wow. I want to do something with it at some point, but
Okay.
yeah, no, we were on the private jet, I think, heading to Finland, and Duff was like, it was kind of a running joke because every time I was filming, Duff would be sleeping. Like, he wasn't really sleeping; he was like laying down, stretching his back, meditating or whatever. I don't know, but and Dave was probably just being funny because he's hilarious, and it was just one of those moments where Scott was in a good mood. Look, I mean, all my friends are musicians, and we're all fucking manic depressive. So when it's manic, it's also a lot of fun, and we were having a lot of fun. And Slash and Matt were passed out in the front of the plane, and we grabbed his hat and I put it on Scott's head, and he, you know, was just like dancing around with it. I don't know what he was doing, but I took a picture. It was just a funny moment, you know.
It's a great moment. It reminded me of, I don't know if you remember the movie An American Tail, Fievel, when he put on his the little mouse, Fievel Mouskowitz. I don't know. Maybe there'll people out there will get my reference. But when he put on his dad's, well, it came out in the early '80s, so I thought that might be a chance, but whatever. It reminded me of a scene, and if any of my listeners get the reference, they will laugh. Anyway, Rocco, thank you so much for your time. I know we kind of went over time, but I feel like we hit a groove conversationally, and not just to learn about your history and your journey, and of course some great Velvet Revolver stories, but just, you know, what you've been through and how the battle never ends. This is life, and you have so many wonderful moments in your life, so many difficult moments, but that's what makes a person, and you're still going, and you're continuing, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And as I mentioned earlier,
I should probably tell you about that, what I'm doing.
Yeah, please.
You asked me about like what's happening. Yeah, so I started at Phono. Yeah, they let's see what happened. Yeah, so Jeff invited me to come back and hang out, and we would hang out, and then I met Ron, and they needed like a chief engineer, so I started working. So now I'm at Phonogenic Studios in Van Nuys, which is Rami's studio, and I'm the chief engineer there. I've been there since like January, I guess.
Cool.
December, January, and so I'm really focusing now on getting back to songwriting, because that, you know, it's kind of gone full circle, and I just feel like I owe it to Scott and Jeremy, you know, and my pop, you know, to like, I mean, look, Jeremy and I would sit around and talk about, like, we would dream about one day having, you know, like a record out, like on a label. And when we did Blaster, well, when they did Blaster, I wasn't really around for it too much, but when they did Blaster, you know, Jeremy wrote a lot of that stuff. He wrote, you know, obviously all the guitar stuff, and wrote, you know, there's a song on there called Circles that I still can't listen to. But he was so excited about it, you know, and he was living with me for like a year and a half when they were making Blaster. He lived with me and my wife. And he would play me demos and stuff. And he was so excited that he was finally going to have, you know, look, because at first, like, every sideman musician in LA is trying to get in on songwriting with the artist, you know, I mean, or not trying to, but would like to, ideally, if they're a songwriter, you know, because that's where the money is. So, when Jeremy was writing songs with Scott, with the Wild Abouts and all that stuff, it was, you know, he was on top of the world, and I was super excited for him. And then, you know, the day before Blaster was released, Jeremy passed away, and so he never got to see it come out. And and I feel like, you know, we were starting to do songwriting sessions, him and I, so I just feel like I kind of owe it to him and Scott. You know, I just owe it to people that encouraged me that aren't here anymore. I still kind of feel them, like in my world, I guess. You know, I just feel them, like they kind of they still have my back. You know, and I feel like if I'm not like pursuing my music, then I'm just doing them a disservice, and I'm letting them down, even though they're not, you know, they're here. I'm just not in the physical realm, but anyway, so
I get it.
So that's what I'm doing at Phonogenic. I'm doing a lot of songwriting sessions, and the one thing that I've always been super passionate about is helping younger artists, musicians, and mentoring them, whether it be songwriting or some kids are into production. I'll teach them production. Some are into video. Some of my friends are just into being in rock bands and whether it's copyright forms, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just always I like to try to help because I had help when I was coming up. If it wasn't for Doug and Scott and folks like that, I wouldn't have had a career. And so I feel like when you get to a certain point in your career, it's time to send the elevator back down for the next guy. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm doing we were talking about doing a record label with Phonogenic, with Rami and Jeff and Ron. And so I'm currently looking for talented artists and bands. And I've got a guy named Colin Martin that I'm working with, and there's a band called the Trash Dogs that I'm working with, and then my friend Gabe Masca, we did a song called Contrition, and my friend Bassett, his record's coming out that we did. My friend Joe Perez is a great guitar player. So that's kind of what I'm doing, man. I'm just really focusing on writing and co-writing and learning Ableton and going beyond the rock genre and getting more into programming and just expanding my horizons as a producer and as a writer. And I can kind of start to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit with my mental health.
Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah,
that's amazing, Rocco. Your whole story again is inspirational, and I know just the tip of the iceberg of who you are, what you were able to share with us today, and I appreciate you being so candid and open. And when you make that record, your next project, please keep us informed. Let us know so we can follow and track, because Scott saw something in you, and like you said, he supported you. And I'm the same way with people who supported me, like my dad or my grandfather. Even though they're not here, you live for them, and that's the circle of life, I guess. At the end of a corny note, but thank you, Rocco, again so much for your time, and just keep us posted with everything that you have going on.
Yeah, man, for sure. Definitely. Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Our last interview for the mental health compilation is Sully Erna from Godsmack, recorded August of 2020. Yeah! Hey, Sully, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I guess it's kind of a loaded question. It's kind of a normal greeting, but how is anybody today?
All good, man.
I'm excited to talk to you about the event Live from the Living Room and your foundation, the Scars Foundation. But I'm just curious. I mean, you do so many interviews. I don't know if you recall. It might have been like when we were actually allowed to see people. This is when Godsmack was in Tribeca. You were doing a performance at the iHeartRadio Theater, and you had a couple.
Okay.
And you had a couple of interviews that day. You had to go up like a flight, and I interviewed you about like the 90s. It was like 90s rock, and we were in a room that I may have told you like sometimes Ryan Seacrest broadcasts out of. I have a cane. I don't know if any of this is ringing a bell at all.
I don't know, vaguely.
That's okay. I just want to acknowledge, because I'm posting, and so I don't seem like a weirdo, because I'm posting a picture of you and I when we met like a couple years ago. But I don't think at the time when we met, because I would have spoken to you about this, when did you start the Scars Foundation? When did that start?
Probably about just a little less than a year and a half ago. It was, I want to say March or April of 2019.
That's okay. So that makes sense, I guess, because I didn't when I interviewed you, this didn't start. But it really hits home for me, Sully, because on this podcast, we'll talk about rock and roll and cool things. But I did a whole episode about depression with former Guns N' Roses manager Ellen Niven, and I talk about mental health often. So if you can tell us about the Scars Foundation, how it started, and some of the things that you provide.
So let me Let me just step inside here real quick because I was putting some stuff in my truck.
That's okay.
To go down the studio in a little bit to prep some stuff, and we're possibly going to go on the air again today to just pump this thing up a little bit more. But
I appreciate the time.
So no worries. So the Scars Foundation was something that popped up, inspired by when I wrote the song Under Your Scars, because the subject in that song deals with people needing to accept their flaws, their battle wounds from life, these things that are imperfect about them, whether they're physical or emotional scars. And the song kind of addresses that. It's kind of more about like, hey, I can live with your damage if you can live with mine, because we all have this stuff. And there's too many people out there that just think they're alone and that they think this is a unique problem and that they're the only ones who are going through it. No one would understand, which is what every person, millions of people deal with when they have these mental illness kind of situations, whether it be severe depression or suicidal tendencies or being bullied or recovery, addiction, that kind of stuff. So it's a very isolated feeling, right? And it goes internal and you get real dark. And so this song was kind of a song more about the hope of knowing that, hey, we're all imperfect and it's okay to be imperfect. It's exactly the way you're supposed to be. So show your scars loudly and proudly. And when that whole kind of theme to the song came about, it really struck a nerve with me because, or a chord, I should say, it struck a chord with me because it really rang true to like realizing that that's probably, if I had any true life experience with anything, right? Because fortunately, I wasn't affected by someone who passed away of cancer or AIDS or something like that. And not that those aren't serious subjects, but I just personally was never affected by it because it never happened in my family so far. So I always wanted to do a charity. I always wanted to have a foundation, but I was just trying to think of what it was and where I could give back, where my expertise lied. And that's where it was for me. And that's when it all kind of dawned on me that, like, you know what? I grew up as an inner city kid battling drugs and guns and violence and crime and gangs. And I faced so many challenges growing up. And it left a lot of these kind of damages, the not having a great household to grow up in, parents divorcing at a young age, being very physically abusive to each other. All that stuff kind of creates damage, right? And then as you grow older, you don't know what it is that's tipping you upside down. But for me, it was realizing after I went through 2 years of hospitalizations from having severe panic attacks and anxiety attacks and things like that, that it was all these kind of things that build up. So you're taught to be strong, you're taught to survive, you're taught to stuff all this stuff down. You can't show weakness on the streets. And it comes back to bite you in the ass later, like as if you stuffed a lot of vegetables and broth into a pressure cooker and screwed the lid down and turned up the heat. Eventually it's going to explode. And so these panic attacks were my body's way of saying, like, you need to release some of the stuff. And so that's kind of how the Scars Foundation was born. I wanted to spend my time giving back in a way where it helps people that deal with any of these categories. And I think we might even be one of the first nonprofits in America right now that deals with multiple categories, not just one specific category like cancer or AIDS or whatever the category is. We deal with severe depression and everything that funnels people into severe depression. So whether that's PTSD, again, bullying, addiction, suicidal tendencies, things like that, all those things are kind of what funnels people in depression. And depression is what eventually hurts people. It's the silent killer, right? So after losing so many great artists and good friends of ours, suicide and addiction and things like that, I just felt like this was the best home for me to give back and lend my experience and try to get people to, start coming forward and being vocal about this, these anxieties and mental illnesses that they carry, because that's when we can give them help. When it stays silent, it's when it's tough to identify. I lost a friend who, we never even knew he had a problem. He was just always a great life of the party kind of guy. Never even knew he took medication for depression. Like, it's that quiet sometimes. And then one day I get a phone call and he took his life. And I'm like, we never even knew he had a problem. So it's a silent killer, and you have to get it to be vocal. And the only way to get it to be vocal is to do things like this and get other people to step up and speak about it and share their stories in hopes that they'll inspire other people to come forward and share their stories. And I think that's the only way we'll make a dent in it.
And I agree with you. And I also thank you, because my listeners know, and as I mentioned, I talk about it, as obviously Chris Cornell's passing and Chester Bennington's passing and Scott Weiland's passing has affected us all. It affected me. Really, it hit home for me, because I lost my father the same way as Chris and Chester. It was about a year before Robin Williams unfortunately lost his battle as well. So, and I've been in therapy for nearly a decade, and I wish that something like this was so in the forefront when I was younger. I think this is great, and we're finally talking about it now. So can you tell me about, I guess, the roster that you have lined up? Because you have some other names on there that have also spoken about mental health. So can you just tell us who's going to join you from the living room?
Yeah, for sure. So, I had the opportunity just to kind of kill my own boredom, so I didn't spin out of control and just go crazy sitting in these years of COVID and isolation, which is probably the worst place for people to sit.
Yep.
And the worst thing that could have happened to this world right now for the people who do deal with, depression and isolation and things like that.
Yep.
So for me, it was just about keeping myself busy. And so I created this show on YouTube called Hometown Sessions, and we just had some fun with it. It wasn't meant to be taken seriously. We wanted to talk about the Scars Foundation and help people when we can. Other episodes are more geared towards hanging with the boys, having fun, laughing, joking around about stuff, and just killing time, a little bit of performances here and there. And so to all the guests that came on, they were all gracious enough to donate a really cool, raw, intimate performance. Sometimes more electric and amped up, other times very stripped down and acoustic, but they're all unique in their own way. And the performances that we'll see tomorrow night will be from everyone from Clint Lowry from Seven Dust, Mike and Adam from Saint Asonia, which Mike Mushak is from Stained, and Adam is from 3 Days Grace.
Right. Yeah.
They have a project called Saint Asonia, so they're gonna do a performance. We have performances by Nuno Betancourt, who is a guitar legend.
Yeah.
Brent and Zach from Shinedown. Aaron Lewis. I think Taylor Momsen's going to be coming on just to chat with us and catch up.
Wow.
And say hi to everyone. And so it's going to be a pretty good lineup like that. Zach from Shinedown is going to come on and say hi and talk a little bit about what's coming up for them.
Papa
and
Roach
we're going to
too, right?
Some of the Papa Roach.
Yeah.
Yep. Jacoby came on the show, which was a really fun show. And so they're going to do a performance. And we're going to be it's going to be kind of like the Jerry Lewis telethon style, where we're just going to keep going until at least midnight, where we're going to talk to people, talk to some listeners. We're going to try to keep ramping up the donations. We're going to keep ramping up the auction bids for some of these really special and rare musical instruments that we're putting up for auction that come from our personal collection and have recorded some really famous records of ours and have been on tour with us and TV appearances and all kinds of history behind these guitars and drums. Recap some of the episodes and look at some of the best times of all the stuff we did when people came on and just that kind of thing, and just, see where it goes from there. A lot of it is just going to be kind of spur of the moment. We'll see where it goes. But I think really if people are tuned into this and want to come on board, my biggest piece of advice would be try to find a way to connect your phone or your laptop to your TV with your stereo system, because you can really make a cool evening out of this with your family and turn it up and listen to some great music and, have a few laughs, and hopefully we'll, be able to generate a lot of money for the Scars Foundation.
And you're saying, I know what you're going to put on, and I laugh just because, and my listeners are going to laugh as well, because every Wednesday right now, and this ties into a lot of things that we're talking about, because you mentioned quarantine is a very difficult time for those who are alone and dealing with it. I'm telling you, Sully, if this happened during any other point in my life, I don't know if I would have survived it. But I'm glad that I've been in therapy, and I'm at a point where I'm in a healthy relationship. I have 3 cats, but I know if this happened, maybe even 3 years ago, I shudder to think. But anyway, so speaking of the girl that I live with, my girlfriend, every Wednesday she puts on a live stream. She connects our laptop to Dave Matthews. There's a Dave Matthews stream. I'm not a Dave Matthews guy. I respect him. It's just not my thing. I usually put on a horror movie on my laptop and just to spend time with her. Yeah. So I just think that's and because you're right, that's exactly what we do for whether it was Ringo's birthday. We just hook up the laptop and put it on, and I think it's fantastic. Is there? Because I know I got you just before you're going into the studio. I won't keep you up for too much longer. Is there?
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate. Is there any people that you've reached out to or want to reach out to? Because I'm hoping this becomes a thing for obviously a variety of reasons, for all the good work you do. But this seems to be this is going to be my entertainment versus watching Dave Matthews. I'm going to make her watch this.
Why, do we compete on the same night? Is he on Thursdays?
Actually, no. I'll let's see. Because since it's on a Thursday, I guess I have to watch Dave Matthews tonight. Damn. All right.
Well, he's on every night.
Just every Wednesday. It's been going on for months. And he does it for charity as well, which is great. It's just not, I would prefer to see Godsmack and Papa Roach. That's more my alley. But, as long as So I'm curious whether it even be Dave Matthews. Is there somebody, are there friends of yours? Because you know everyone that you want to get maybe in the future that maybe you had to turn away because you can't, this is not going to be a 24/7 broadcast.
I really wanted to get Lizzie Hale and Joe on there. She's such a great natural talent. I thought it would have been great to get a performance from her or have her check in. She'd be really great if she could come on board. There's a few artists out there I asked. Disturbed just flat out declined, which I thought was kind of lame, but whatever. They got their own thing going on, and so be it. But yeah, Lizzie definitely was someone that I was hoping to be able to see at some point. We're trying to reach out and see if what's going on with her schedule, if she'll be able to check in. So there's a lot of cool bands out there. It's just everybody's kind of doing their thing right now, and I'm not sure who will be available and who won't. But again, we're going to just play it by ear. I know we have enough right now to really make this a very full evening. I cannot see this thing being any less than 3 or 4 hours to begin with. So, right. It's definitely going to, I have to predict it's going to go from 8 to at least midnight. And that's a pretty good amount of time. People got to, get up in the morning with their kids and all that as well. Well, otherwise I would just do this 24 hours for a whole week and just really pump up, the money as much as I can, because I really want to set a minimal goal of $100,000, and we're not even close to that yet. We're not even at 10%. So I'm really hoping tomorrow's a big night for us, and we just need to get as many people jumping on board, making a donation, having a good time. And for that, I'm offering to give them all this great entertainment, for a small price. And it's, it's at your free will. So I know some people are in the hurt box or whatever, but whatever they can do, if it's $5, $10, or, 10,000, it's whatever they're comfortable with, but at least contribute something for the amount of effort we put into bringing this kind of entertainment for you.
Well, you can think about it. This would be the money that you would have spent on concerts this summer. So now you're putting it towards something else, right?
Yeah, it's good entertainment. Like I said, you'll have some laughs. Get serious about a couple things. You'll see some really great performances, really unique, like tailored just for these people for this specific show. Like they did this just for you guys. They did this just for the fans. They busted out an acoustic, and they just took their time to deliver something that, they thought people would enjoy and see it stripped down and raw and literally live from their living room.
Obviously, this is an undertaking, and your passion maybe doesn't make it seem like it's a job for you, but obviously a lot of work. Before I let you go, I'm just curious, in addition to live from the living room in the Scars Foundation. Are you working on anything else in quarantine, or maybe any sort of hobbies that you're picking up during, to keep you sane that you're doing at home?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always doing something. Right now, I'm just trying to wrap up this Hometown Sessions episode and make sure, we do as much as we can. And then, I do things on the side. I have a small muscle car collection that I'm always into and trying to, find cool cars that I've enjoyed from my childhood and my past that, I'm just looking for certain cars and things like that. I box. I do a lot of boxing on the side for my workout. So that keeps me busy and keeps me in shape. And other than that, we're just starting to get ready to write more music now for the Godsmack record. And we're going to try to maybe even do 2 albums next year. So there's an acoustic EP and a full-length rock record.
Ooh.
And I might even work with the solo band to do some solo stuff. So I got a lot going on. And, it's just, it's better to stay busy, I believe, than to stay bored. Bored gets you in trouble.
You are absolutely right. You couldn't be more right. And this podcast keeps me sane. It's crazy. But so everything you're doing is fantastic. I love the lineup you're putting together, not just, again, on an entertainment value, but the great work you're doing for the Scars Foundation. I encourage people to go to youtube.com/the Sully Erna to watch it, and facebook.com/the Scars Foundation to find out all the information about all the auctions going on and about the foundation itself. Sully, this was great. I hope you're doing well. I hope I get to see you. Hope I get to see anybody on the road soon. Just best of luck and keep doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sully.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. So that does it for this Appetite for Distortion compilation, Volume 2, Mental Health. If you want to revisit Volume 1 about West Arkeen, please do so on the very YouTube channel in which you are on right now. And for any future compilations you would like to see put together from AFD Show interviews, you can always email me at theafdshow@gmail.com or follow on social media, facebook.com/theafdshow, Twitter @theafdshow, or on Instagram, Appetite for Distortion. So when will you see the next compilation? What will the subject be? Well, in the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it, I don't know if soon is the word,